Story 1. This story is titled, Confronted My Wife About Her Affair Partner. She laughed and said, Women can have the cake and eat it too now. So I served her cake. Hey everyone, I just wanted to share something real with you. The channel's been slowing down a bit recently, and honestly, I put a lot of time and effort into finding these stories to keep bringing you the best content. If you enjoy what I do, it would mean the world if you hit that subscribe button. Your support really makes all the difference and keeps this journey going strong. Thanks so much for being here with me. Now let's start the video. OP starts by saying, when my wife and I first met, it felt like we were a team. She was confident, ambitious, and had a career in management. I was climbing my way up in coding, relying on my skills and experience instead of a formal degree. Our differences seemed complementary at first. She'd tease me about not having a degree, and I'd joke about her corporate jargon. It was harmless fun, or so I thought. When we got married, we were equals in most ways. Both debt-free, earning similar salaries, and sharing household expenses. Life was comfortable, and we spent our free time enjoying date nights, cooking together, or watching TV. We dreamed of starting a family someday, even setting up one of our spare bedrooms as a future nursery. Then the pandemic hit, and everything changed. Like many couples, we both started working from home. At first, it was manageable. We turned one of the spare rooms into her office while I kept using my existing setup. It felt temporary, so I didn't think much about how it might affect us. But as weeks turned into months, I started noticing subtle shifts. We approached working from home differently, almost oppositely. I'd get up early, make breakfast, shower, and even put on a suit to signal I was in work mode. My wife, on the other hand, rolled out of bed in sweatpants and jumped straight into her workday, often playing games on her iPad between emails. At first, it was just a difference in style. I thought, who cares how she works as long as she gets things done? Portstol. The tension started small. She complained about me closing my office door during meetings, saying it made her feel excluded. I explained that I needed focus during my daily Scrum meetings, but she didn't seem to understand. She started making comments like, why are you hiding? We're in the same house all day anyway. It felt like a jab, but I brushed it off. The real strain came when I tried to keep up our routines outside of work. I'd suggest a movie night or cooking something new, and she'd wave it off, saying, we see each other all day already. Why do we need more time together? That hurt. We'd always been close, and now she seemed distant, like being in the same house was enough connection for her. Her office partially reopened a few months into the lockdown, and she jumped at the chance to go back. She was eager to be around her coworkers again, and I didn't blame her. I missed office life too, but my company stayed fully remote. She started going in 3 days a week, coming home later and later. At first, I assumed she was just adjusting to the new schedule. But soon, it became clear she wasn't just working late. She was staying out with coworkers for drinks or dinner. I asked her about it once, and her answer was vague. Just the usual crowd, she said, avoiding eye contact. I felt uneasy, but I didn't want to seem paranoid. After all, we were both under a lot of stress, right? The distance between us grew. The warmth she used to show was gone, replaced by cold indifference. I started noticing things I'd ignored before, how she'd become secretive with her phone, stepping away to take calls or brushing off texts with just work stuff. She was quieter at home, more withdrawn, and any attempt I made to connect was met with disinterest or outright dismissal. By the time we hit our 5th wedding anniversary, we were like strangers. I told myself it was just a rough patch, something all couples go through. I didn't want to believe that the woman I'd built a life with was slipping away from me, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. It was a Saturday morning when everything unraveled. My wife handed me her old iPad and casually asked, can you wipe this for me? I'm giving it to my niece. It wasn't an unusual request. She often relied on me for tech-related things. I nodded, barely looking up from my coffee, and she left the house soon after, saying she had errands to run. I didn't think much of it. I set the iPad on my desk and planned to reset it later in the day. But as I picked it up to start the process, I noticed it was still logged into her messaging app. Out of habit, I glanced at the screen. That's when I saw the first message. It wasn't from me. It wasn't from anyone I recognized. And it wasn't innocent. At first, I thought I must be misunderstanding what I was seeing. But as I scrolled through the conversation, reality hit me like a truck. There were messages, photos, and videos exchanged between her and her boss. Explicit ones. They'd been having an affair for at least 2 months. I sat there in shock, my hands trembling as I kept scrolling. My brain couldn't process it all. The woman I'd shared my life with, the woman I trusted, had been lying to me. And not just a casual lie. This was calculated, intentional, and brazen. The texts were worse than I imagined. She talked about me, referring to me as boring and too predictable. She complained about my work from home routine, mocking the way I dressed up for meetings. One message burned into my memory. "He's so clueless," I could scream. "You're the only thing keeping me sane right now." That line hit me like a punch to the gut. I thought back to all the times I'd tried to bridge the gap between us. The nights I'd suggested we spend time together, the little surprises I'd planned to cheer her up, the patience I'd shown when she pulled away. It wasn't enough for her. Or maybe it was too much. Either way, she'd chosen someone else. After saving everything to a secure cloud drive, I shut the iPad and sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. My heart was racing, my stomach churning. I didn't know whether to cry, scream, or punch a hole in the wall. Instead, I just sat there, frozen, as the reality of her betrayal sank in. When she came home later that evening, I couldn't even look at her. She breezed through the door, tossed her keys on the counter, and greeted me like nothing had happened. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, her tone casual and light. I mumbled something about work and went to my office, shutting the door behind me. My mind raced. Should I confront her? Should I demand an explanation? But every time I imagined the conversation, I felt a wave of nausea. Her lies had been so thorough, so bold. I didn't trust myself to stay calm. The next day, I called a lawyer. I'd never spoken to one before, but I knew I couldn't handle this alone. The lawyer listened patiently as I laid everything out, from the messages I'd found to the growing distance in our marriage. When I was finished, he asked me a simple question. "What do you want to do about this?" "I want a divorce," I said, the words coming out firmer than I expected. He didn't seem surprised. "If that's the case, you'll need more evidence. Courts are unpredictable, and the more proof you have, the better. I recommend hiring a private investigator to gather what we need." He explained that in our at-fault state, adultery could significantly impact the division of assets and alimony, but only if we could present a solid case. "You need to stay calm," he said. "Don't confront her yet. Let her think she's gotten away with it. The more comfortable she feels, the more careless she'll become." It sounded like good advice, but the thought of staying silent felt unbearable. Every time I saw her, every time she smiled at me or made small talk, it felt like another knife in my back. The private investigator worked quickly. Within a week, they had more evidence than I ever thought possible. Photos of her meeting her boss at his apartment, videos of them kissing in the parking lot after work, time-stamped screenshots of their messages. It was all there, laid out in excruciating detail. When the investigator handed me the final report, I felt both vindicated and devastated. There was no denying what she'd done, but seeing it all in black and white, every betrayal documented, was like reliving the pain all over again. By this point, I was barely functioning at home. I avoided her as much as possible, keeping conversations to a minimum and spending most of my time in my office. She didn't seem to notice or care. Her phone was always in her hand, her face lighting up at incoming messages I knew weren't from me. She stopped asking about my day, stopped making any effort to engage with me at all. One night, as she sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "You think I don't know?" I said, my voice trembling with anger. She looked up, startled. "What are you talking about?" I stood there, fists clenched. "I know, about you and your boss. I've seen the texts, the pictures, the videos. Don't bother lying." For a moment, she just stared at me, her face a mix of shock and something else, defiance. "And?" she finally said, crossing her arms. "What are you going to do about it?" Her tone, her smugness, it set me off. "What am I going to do? I'm divorcing you. That's what I'm going to do." She smirked, shaking her head. "Oh, please, you won't leave me? Even if you try, I'll get half of everything. You might as well stay. It's better for both of us." Her words, her arrogance, her complete lack of remorse, it was like a switch flipped in my brain. "You think this is a marriage?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She laughed, a cold, bitter laugh that made my blood boil. "Honey, this is the 21st century. A woman can have her cake and eat it too." That was the moment I decided I wasn't just going to leave her. I was going to make sure she felt the full weight of what she'd done. After that night, everything changed. The woman I'd married, who I thought I knew, was gone, replaced by someone cold and indifferent. Her laughter, the smugness, and those final words, "A woman can have her cake and eat it too," echoed in my head for days. I couldn't stop replaying the moment, feeling the anger boil just under the surface. My lawyer had already told me to keep my emotions in check. "The courts don't favor theatrics," he warned. "Judges care about fairness and professionalism. Any emotional stunts could come back to bite you." I nodded and said I'd keep things civil, but deep down, I wanted her to feel some of the humiliation she'd caused me. That's when the idea hit me. If she wanted to talk about having her cake and eating it too, I'd make sure she remembered those words for the rest of her life. I started looking for a bakery that could handle custom cakes. After some searching, I found one that offered edible image printing. You could upload any photo, and they'd recreate it in frosting. It was perfect. I went through the evidence I'd gathered, picking a photo that wasn't too explicit, but would still make the message crystal clear. It showed her and her boss in a compromising position, clothed but unmistakable. Above the image, I had the words piped in bold, decorative icing. Here's your cake. Eat it too. The bakery didn't ask any questions, and I didn't volunteer any details. When I picked up the cake, I couldn't help but smile. It was ridiculous and petty, but in that moment, it felt like justice. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I coordinated with the process server to have the cake and divorce papers delivered to her office. He was an older guy, the kind who'd probably seen it all, but when I told him the plan, he laughed out loud. "You've got guts, I'll give you that," he said. "This is going to be a story for the books." The next day, I waited anxiously for his update. When the call came, I answered immediately. "You won't believe the scene," he said, barely able to contain his laughter. I walked into her office during lunch, cake in hand, and asked for her by name. She was sitting with a group of coworkers, laughing and chatting like nothing was wrong. She confirmed her name, so I set the box on the table, opened it, and put the papers next to it. Then I said, "You've been served." "What happened next?" I asked, leaning forward in my chair. She froze at first, just staring at the cake. Then she went pale. One of her coworkers leaned over to look and gasped, "Oh my God!" That's when she completely lost it, screaming, swatting the cake off the table, but it landed face up on the carpet. Everyone saw it. A few people started laughing, and others just walked out. Her boss bolted out of the room without a word. I could picture it in my head. The chaos, the embarrassment, the reality of her actions crashing down on her. It wasn't just satisfying, it was cathartic. The aftermath was immediate. My phone started blowing up within minutes of the cake delivery. Texts, voicemails, missed calls. It was nonstop. At first, I ignored it, letting the notifications pile up. Then her mom texted me. "She's staying with me for now. Please don't contact her unless it's urgent." I laughed at the irony. She was acting like I was the one harassing her. Meanwhile, I hadn't even responded to a single message. That night, I sat in my office, reflecting on what I'd done. The initial rush of satisfaction was fading, replaced by a creeping sense of doubt. My lawyer's warnings echoed in my mind. Judges don't have a sense of humor. Any act of pettiness could hurt your case. Had I gone too far? Would this stunt come back to haunt me in court? I didn't regret the message, but I worried about how it might be perceived. As much as I wanted to see her humiliated, my ultimate goal was to protect myself in the divorce. The last thing I needed was to jeopardize my position because of a cake. The next day, I called my lawyer to come clean. He sighed when I told him what I'd done. "Michael, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Judges don't like these kinds of antics. It could make you look vindictive." "I wasn't trying to be vindictive," I said defensively. "I just wanted to make a point." "I get it," he replied. "And honestly, it's not the worst thing I've seen. But from now on, you need to focus on the big picture. Leave the drama out of it." I agreed, though part of me still felt like the cake had been worth it. The aftermath of the cake stunt was immediate and far-reaching. By the next day, the story of her public humiliation had spread through her office like wildfire. Mutual friends began texting me, asking if the rumors were true. I didn't reply to most of them, but from the details they shared, I pieced together the scene that had unfolded. Apparently, several coworkers had filmed the cake reveal, and videos were circulating among staff. Her boss, the man she'd cheated with, had immediately distanced himself, refusing to speak to her outside of strictly work-related matters. HR had been alerted, though it seemed like no formal complaints had been filed yet. Meanwhile, her so-called friends at work, the ones who had encouraged the affair, turned on her in an instant. "She brought this mess into the office," one of them allegedly said. "She deserves whatever fallout she gets." The irony of it all was almost poetic. The same people who had egged her on were now scapegoating her to protect themselves. She was left alone, ostracized, and panicking. At home, things were quieter. She hadn't come back since the cake delivery, opting to stay with her mom instead. That suited me just fine. My lawyer had advised me not to engage with her directly, so I ignored her texts and calls. Most of them alternated between begging for forgiveness and accusing me of ruining her life. I forwarded everything to my lawyer without replying. I'll admit, a small part of me felt guilty. Not for exposing her lies, she deserved that, but for the sheer public nature of it all. It wasn't just our marriage that had fallen apart. Her professional life and social reputation were now in shambles. But every time I started to second-guess myself, I remembered her laughing in my face, telling me I'd never leave her. That memory was enough to quiet any lingering doubts. A week later, she emailed me, asking to come by the house to talk. My lawyer advised me to allow it, but only under strict conditions. Record everything, he said, and have witnesses present. You don't want her twisting the narrative later. I agreed, and two mutual friends came over to act as witnesses. We set up our phones to record the conversation and waited for her to arrive. When she walked in, she looked completely different, frazzled, anxious, and far from the confident, smug person I'd confronted weeks earlier. She sat at the kitchen table, avoiding eye contact. I just want to explain, she began, her voice shaky. I don't know what came over me. It's like, it wasn't even me doing those things. I wasn't in control. I leaned back, crossing my arms. You were in control enough to lie to me for months. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I thought she might actually take responsibility. But then, she shifted the blame. It wasn't just me, she said. My co-workers. They got into my head. They kept telling me I deserved more, that you were holding me back. I raised an eyebrow. Holding you back how? By trusting you? Supporting you? Providing a home? She flinched at my tone but pressed on. They said you weren't ambitious enough, that I needed someone who could challenge me intellectually. They made me feel like I was missing out. Her excuses made my blood boil. So what? You cheated because a bunch of office gossips psychoanalyzed me behind my back? She looked down at her hands. I'm not saying it's an excuse, I don't know why I let them influence me. Then came the real bombshell. She admitted that the same co-workers, whom she now called the Three Witches, had turned on her after the cake incident. Not only had they cut ties with her, but they'd also started blackmailing her. They were demanding $5,000 to stay silent, threatening to go to HR with all the sordid details of her affair if she didn't pay up. I don't have that kind of money, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I sold my car to cover my legal fees, and I'm barely scraping by. Please, I need your help. I stared at her, stunned by the audacity. You want me to help you? After everything you've done? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I don't know where else to turn. I don't want to lose my job on top of everything else. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the texts, the lies, and the laughter. I shook my head. There's no going back to normal after this. You need to deal with the consequences of your choices. What should I do? She asked, looking desperate. Report yourself, I said bluntly. Report your boss and your coworkers too. If you give in now, they'll just keep coming back for more. At least if you go to HR first, you can control the narrative. She hesitated, clearly torn between self-preservation and fear. But what if they fire me? Then that's on you, I said coldly. You made this mess. You can't expect me to clean it up for you. Before she left, she asked one last question. What about us? Is there any chance we can fix this? I didn't even hesitate. There is no us. It's over. Get yourself a lawyer and prepare for the divorce. Her shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I thought she might argue. But instead, she just nodded and walked out the door. The sound of it closing behind her was like the final nail in the coffin. In the days that followed, I heard bits and pieces about her situation. She hadn't reported herself to HR, and from what mutual friends told me, the blackmail demands were escalating. Her life was spiraling out of control, but I kept my distance. I'd already spent too much time and energy on her. I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. I just wanted to move on. When the divorce proceedings officially began, I felt a mix of relief and dread. On one hand, I was finally taking steps to free myself from her betrayal. On the other, I knew this wasn't going to be easy. Divorce is messy, even under the best circumstances, and ours was far from amicable. My lawyer had been preparing for weeks, gathering evidence and documenting everything we could. The affair, the messages, the photos, it was all lined up and ready to present. He reminded me that we were in an at-fault state, which meant her infidelity would play a significant role in determining the division of assets and any alimony claims. Stay calm, he told me before our first court appearance. The evidence speaks for itself. Let her be the one who looks unreasonable. The first hearing focused on temporary orders, how bills and responsibilities would be handled during the divorce process. Her lawyer came out swinging, trying to paint her as a victim. He claimed that the affair was an emotional response to neglect, and that I had withdrawn emotionally and physically long before she cheated. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, but I kept my face neutral. My lawyer calmly countered, presenting the evidence of her affair and highlighting the timeline. The messages and photos showed that she had been the one withdrawing, lying, and sneaking around for months. The judge seemed unimpressed by her lawyer's arguments and ruled in my favor. I retained control of the house, our shared accounts, and all major financial decisions until the final ruling. After that, things started to unravel for her. She had already sold her car to cover her legal fees, and mutual friends told me she was borrowing money from her parents to make ends meet. The blackmail from her former co-workers hadn't stopped either, and she was visibly struggling to keep her life together. Despite all of this, she kept trying to contact me. Emails, voicemails, and even handwritten letters showed up almost daily. One email stood out, not because it was different, but because it perfectly encapsulated her mindset. "You're ruining my life," she wrote. "How can you just throw everything away like this? We could fix this if you would just stop being so stubborn." It was almost laughable. She still couldn't see that she had done this to herself. I forwarded the email to my lawyer and didn't respond. I wasn't interested in playing her games anymore. The second hearing was where things got more heated. Her lawyer pushed hard for alimony, arguing that her reputation at work had been unfairly damaged and that she deserved financial support to get back on her feet. It was a bold move, considering the evidence of her affair was the reason for her damaged reputation. My lawyer didn't even need to rebut it in detail. The judge dismissed the claim outright, stating that her actions had directly contributed to her situation. The court also reviewed the division of assets. My lawyer made a compelling case for why I should retain full ownership of the house and the majority of our shared savings. He emphasized that I had been the primary financial contributor for years, and that her infidelity had irreparably damaged the marriage. Her lawyer tried to argue for a 50-50 split, but the judge wasn't having it. The final ruling left her with little more than her personal belongings and a small portion of our savings. I kept the house, the car, and the bulk of our assets. She looked completely defeated when the judge announced the decision. For a brief moment, I felt a twinge of pity, but then I remembered all the lies, the laughter, and the arrogance, and that pity quickly faded. Outside of court, she tried one last Hail Mary. She emailed me, suggesting that we attend marriage counseling to rebuild what we had. My lawyer advised me to entertain the idea, not because I was obligated to reconcile, but because it would make me look reasonable in the judge's eyes. "Judges like to see that you're willing to compromise, even if it's just on paper," he explained. The counseling session was held over Zoom. She was at her mom's house, and I was in my home office. The counselor spent most of the time trying to assign blame equally, saying things like, "It takes two to create distance in a marriage," and "Both of you need to take responsibility for what went wrong." I refused to engage with the narrative. "I don't agree," I said simply. "This wasn't a mutual breakdown. She made a choice, and that choice destroyed our marriage." The counselor seemed frustrated but didn't push further. At the end of the session, my wife asked if I'd agree to another meeting. "What would it take for us to try again?" she pleaded. I didn't hesitate. "Nothing. There's no going back." I logged off before she could respond. By the time the divorce was finalized, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The court's decision had given me almost everything: my house, my savings, and most importantly, my freedom. She walked away with barely enough to start over, but that wasn't my concern anymore. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. Final update. It's been a few months since the divorce was finalized, and I thought I'd finally moved past everything. I rebuilt my life, got my house back in order, and even started finding peace with what happened. But life has a way of circling back to unfinished business. This time, it wasn't about me, it was about her. A mutual friend reached out a few weeks ago with some news about my ex-wife. Apparently, things at her job had taken a turn for the worse. After the cake stunt and the fallout that followed, her office became a minefield of tension. The rumor mill churned nonstop, and her reputation was shot. HR finally stepped in when someone anonymously sent in evidence of her affair with her boss. Photos, messages, everything. I had a pretty good guess who that anonymous person was. She wasn't fired immediately, but they put her under investigation, which effectively destroyed her standing in the company. Her boss, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. HR had no patience for someone in his position abusing power and engaging in an affair with a subordinate. He was terminated within a week of the investigation starting, with security escorting him out of the building in front of everyone. Her three witches friends, those co-workers who had encouraged the affair, didn't stick around to support her. They turned on her completely, throwing her under the bus in their HR interviews to save their own skins. My ex-wife became a pariah in the office, and within a month, she was let go too. That's not the end of it, though. A week after I heard about the investigation, I got an unexpected email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line simply read, "We need to talk about your ex-wife and my husband." Turns out her boss's wife had found out about the affair, and she was furious. Someone at his company tipped her off after the investigation started, and she'd been digging for information ever since. When she finally reached me, she was polite but direct, asking if I had any evidence I could share. At first, I hesitated. Getting involved in someone else's divorce felt messy, but then I thought about everything he and my ex had put me through. He had helped ruin my marriage, and now his wife wanted to take him down. It only felt fair to give her the tools to do it. I forwarded her everything, the photos, the texts, the videos. She thanked me profusely and promised she'd put it to good use. "He's going to regret every second of this," she said. From what I've heard since, she didn't hold back. She filed for divorce almost immediately, and with the evidence I provided, she absolutely destroyed him in court. He lost custody of their kids, had to sell their house to cover the settlement, and was ordered to pay substantial alimony. The cherry on top? His reputation was completely trashed in their social circle. Turns out his wife wasn't shy about sharing the details of his betrayal with anyone who'd listen. Meanwhile, my ex-wife hasn't fared much better. After losing her job, she tried to find work in the same field, but the gossip followed her wherever she went. No one wanted to hire someone with that kind of baggage. Last I heard, she was working part-time at a local retail store and living in a cramped apartment. Her parents have reportedly grown tired of bailing her out financially. They've started distancing themselves, which leaves her even more isolated. Mutual friends say she looks miserable, like the weight of everything she's done is finally hitting her. As for the boss, he's struggling too. With no job, a ruined reputation, and an expensive divorce settlement, he's barely keeping his head above water. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel some satisfaction hearing about his downfall. He thought he could have it all, just like my ex-wife, and now he's paying the price. This whole situation has been a reminder that actions have consequences. For months, I questioned whether I'd done the right thing with the cake stunt, whether exposing her so publicly had been worth it. But seeing how everything played out, I have no regrets. She and her boss tried to tear apart 2 marriages, and now they're dealing with the wreckage they created. Story 2. This story is titled, "My Girlfriend Forgot Her Phone at Home on Proposal Day. What I discovered made me plan the most brutal revenge." Hey guys, I'm still processing all this shit and needed to get it off my chest. So I, 30 male, met my girlfriend Avery, 28 female, about 3 years ago at this coffee shop I used to hit up before work. I was running late that morning, trying to grab my coffee and bolt to an early meeting. In my rush, I did the most cliche thing possible, turned too fast and slammed straight into this girl who was waiting for her drink. My coffee went everywhere, all over my white shirt, my pants, probably ruined my only decent pair of work shoes. Instead of being pissed that I nearly baptized her in hot coffee, she laughed. Like, genuinely laughed. Not that fake polite laugh people do when they think you're an idiot, but a real one. Then she grabbed a stack of napkins and handed them to me. "You always make first impressions this memorable?" she asked with this little smirk that I still remember perfectly. I'm standing there, coffee dripping down my shirt, looking like a complete disaster, but somehow managed to stammer out something about buying her a replacement drink. She said yes, which shocked the hell out of me. Even more shocking? I got her number at the end of it. Our first date was at this dive bar. She showed up looking way too good for that place. I remember thinking I was totally outclassed. Avery worked in marketing, had this fancy executive title at some big firm downtown. Meanwhile, I was just a regular code monkey at a software company. Nothing special. We hit it off immediately, though. Talked for hours. She was smart, funny, ambitious. Everything I wasn't. But somehow it worked. Fast forward a year, and we moved in together. Got this decent apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, but the location was killer. We were that annoying couple that seemed to have everything figured out. Talked about the future, about marriage, kids, the whole package deal. And I was all in. Jake, my best friend since college, would always give me shit about being whipped. But what did he know? He was still living the frat boy life at 30, dating a new girl every month. I had something real. Or at least I thought I did. The first couple years were honestly great. We had our routines. Sunday brunches, Netflix binges, weekend hikes. We'd take trips when we could afford it. Nothing crazy. Just weekend getaways to the coast or up to the mountains. For my birthday last year, she surprised me with tickets to see my favorite band. For hers, I got us a couple's massage at this fancy spa she'd been dropping hints about for months. Then before I knew it, things started changing about 6 months ago. Small stuff at first. Avery suddenly started having these late shifts at work, always on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She said it was for this big client project that would lead to a promotion. Made sense. Avery was always career-focused, always hustling for the next big opportunity. But she'd come home different on those nights. Sometimes extra chatty, other times weirdly quiet. Her perfume smelled stronger, like she'd just reapplied it. Once I noticed a drink stain on her blouse that wasn't there in the morning. Rough day? I asked. Client meeting, she said without missing a beat. You know how it is. And I believed her. Because why wouldn't I? That's what normal people do. They trust the person they've been with for years. Around the same time, she started being more protective of her phone, would take it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom, which she never used to do. Changed her laptop password too. Said it was for work security reasons, which sounded plausible enough. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. and she wasn't in bed. Found her in the kitchen, furiously typing away on her phone. When she noticed me, she jumped like she'd seen a ghost. Jesus, you scared me, she said, quickly putting her phone face down. Just checking work emails. At 2 in the morning? But I didn't push it. Just went back to bed and tried to ignore the weird feeling in my gut. I noticed other things too. She'd get these calls that she'd take in another room. Started doing more girls' nights with coworkers I'd never heard of. When I'd ask about her day, she'd give these vague answers that didn't really tell me anything. But every time those doubts crept in, she'd do something that made me feel stupid for worrying. She'd surprise me with tickets to a game or cook my favorite meal. It was like she could sense when I was getting suspicious and knew exactly how to throw me off the scent. So, I decided to double down on our relationship. If something was wrong, I'd fix it. Started planning more date nights, brought her flowers randomly, even took her on a weekend trip to this winery she'd been wanting to check out. And then I figured it's time. I went ring shopping. Spent way too much time researching the 4 C's of diamonds, like I suddenly needed to become a gemologist. Asked her friend Mia to help pick something out that Avery would like. You sure about this? Jake asked when I showed him the ring I was looking at. That's a lot of money for a little rock. She's worth it, I said confidently, like the absolute clown I was. I dropped 3 months' salary on that ring, made a reservation at this fancy Italian place downtown that's impossible to get into, called Mia to help plan it all out. She was going to make sure Avery wore something nice, did her nails, all that stuff girls apparently care about for proposal photos. The day I planned to propose, I was a nervous wreck. Kept checking my pocket every 5 minutes to make sure the ring was still there. Paced around our apartment waiting for Avery to come home from work so we could head to dinner. That's when her phone rang. She'd forgotten it that morning. Something she never did. The phone kept ringing. Same number, not saved in her contacts. 4 calls in 10 minutes. I kept thinking, what if something was wrong? What if she was hurt? So I picked it up, telling myself I was just being a concerned boyfriend. Hey babe, I've been trying to reach you, some dude's voice said. Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place as always. And just like that, my whole world went to shit. My hands went completely numb holding her phone. Like, literally couldn't feel my fingers anymore. The room started spinning and I had to sit down on the couch before I fell over. Hello? Avery? You there? The voice said again. I hung up without saying anything. What the hell was I supposed to say? Hey man, this is actually the boyfriend. Please tell me you're not banging my girlfriend? Yeah, right. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, just trying to breathe. Then my hands started moving on their own. I opened the phone. It doesn't have a password, although I told her to put 1,000,000 times. I checked her messages with this number. No contact name, just the number. That was the first red flag. Who doesn't save their contacts these days? What I found made me want to throw up. 6 fucking months of messages between them. Half a year of my life that was apparently all bullshit. There were meeting times at the Hyatt downtown. Heart emojis. Sexts that made me want to bleach my eyes. Nudes of Avery. And the worst part? Jokes about me. He still doesn't suspect anything. One of her texts read from a couple months back. Too busy with his video games to notice I'm getting dicked down twice a week, lol. I was about to throw up. I'm not even a big gamer. I play maybe a couple hours on weekends with Jake. But apparently that was enough for her to paint me as some oblivious loser while she was out cheating. And then there was talk about their future. Plans to move in together eventually. How she was going to break things off with me after the holidays because she didn't want to ruin my Christmas. How fucking considerate of her, right? Wouldn't want to spoil my holiday spirit before she destroyed my life. As I'm scrolling through this nightmare, another text comes in from this guy. Don't forget to delete these messages like always. Your boyfriend's too trusting for his own good. You fucking think, asshole? Then I heard her key in the door. I barely had time to put the phone back exactly where she left it and try to look normal. Whatever normal looks like when you just found out your girlfriend of 3 years is a lying, cheating piece of work. She walked in all smiles, looking hot as hell in her work clothes. But for the first time, I was disgusted. Hey, babe! Sorry I'm running late. Work was crazy today. She gave me a quick kiss like nothing was wrong. Let me just grab my phone and freshen up. Then I'm all yours for date night. I watched her face change for just a split second when she saw the missed calls. Her fingers flew across the screen, probably telling lover boy she couldn't meet tonight because of our date. Then she disappeared into our bedroom. I stood there like I was frozen, engagement ring feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my pocket, while she got ready. I could hear her humming in the bathroom. Fucking humming! Feeling proud of herself running 2 relationships at the same time. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a drink. Needed something to stop my hands from shaking. My brain was racing 1,000,000 miles an hour. What the hell was I supposed to do now? Confront her immediately. Start screaming, throw her shit out the window. The whole dramatic scene. Or just pretend I didn't know and catch her in the act somehow. Follow her to one of their meetings. My last option was say nothing, gather evidence, and plan my exit carefully. I've never been great at confrontation. Plus, I was still in shock. So last option was, while she was in the shower, I took pictures of the texts with my phone. All of them. Sent them to my email, backed them up to my cloud drive. No way was she going to delete the evidence before I had receipts. Then I texted Mia. Need to talk ASAP. Important. About Avery. She replied almost immediately. What's up? Not over text. Tomorrow morning? Coffee shop on 12th? 9 a.m.? Sure, everything okay? I didn't answer that one. Nothing was okay, and wouldn't be for a long time. Avery came out of the bedroom looking gorgeous. Wore this tight black dress I'd always loved. Hair perfect, makeup done, smelling like that expensive perfume I'd bought her for Christmas. Ready to go? She asked, grabbing her purse. I'm starving. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak more than necessary. Somehow managed to get us an Uber to the restaurant without losing my shit. On the ride there, she chatted about office gossip, some drama with a coworker I'd never met. I kept thinking, is this coworker even real? Or just another cover story for her late shifts? I nodded along, made the right noises at the right times, all while my brain was screaming, she's been cheating for 6 months, you idiot. We got to Vincenzo's and got seated at the table I'd reserved weeks ago. The one by the window with the city view. The romantic one that cost extra to book. The hostess gave me a little wink. She knew about the proposal plan. What a joke. Avery looked around, impressed. Wow, this place is fancy. What's the occasion? Just wanted to take you somewhere nice, I managed to say, without my voice cracking. The ring box in my pocket felt like it was burning a hole through my pants. I ordered something different from my usual. Avery raised an eyebrow. She knew I was a creature of habit. Everything okay? She asked, reaching across the table to touch my hand. You seem tense. Just work stuff, I lied. Funny how easy it was to lie when you needed to. Maybe I'd learned from the best. She launched into this story about her day at work, spinning lies so effortlessly, I almost had to admire the skill. The challenging project she'd been working on, the difficult client, how her boss was so impressed with her lately. Oscar-worthy performance, really. If lying was an Olympic sport, Avery would have all the gold medals. Throughout dinner, I watched her check her phone under the table at least 4 times. Each time, her fingers would move quickly across the screen before she'd put it away and smile at me like nothing happened. Sorry, work email, she'd say. Can't escape it even at dinner. Sure it is. At one point she asked, I guess she was trying to make up a conversation because I seemed a bit tense. Couldn't help it. Remember our first date? How you kept dropping your fork because you were so nervous? The memory hit me like a truck. I'd been so into her, so excited. Now I was wondering, had there been others before me? How many dudes had she juggled at once? Yeah, was all I could manage. While she chatted about weekend plans with our friends, I thought about our apartment. My name was on the lease. Most of our furniture we'd bought together. We shared a bank account for household expenses. 3 years of entangled lives would take time to unravel. My phone buzzed. Mia had replied to my text from earlier. Getting worried. Is this about the proposal? Second thoughts? I didn't respond. Would deal with that tomorrow. The waiter brought our food. I pushed mine around the plate while Avery ate like she didn't have a care in the world. Even ordered dessert. Chocolate mousse that we supposedly shared, though she ate most of it. So what's the special occasion? She asked again with a smile. You've been so secretive about tonight. I almost pulled out the ring right then, just to see the look on her face. Instead, I took another sip of my drink and said, just wanted to do something nice. You're the best, she said, reaching for my hand again. I'm so lucky to have you. The irony was almost too much to bear. Here she was, telling me how lucky she was, while planning to dump me after the holidays, while fucking some other dude twice a week during her late shifts. By the time we got home, I was exhausted from pretending everything was normal. I laid awake all night, watching her sleep peacefully next to me. The person I thought I knew better than anyone. The person I was ready to spend my life with. Turned out I didn't know her at all. The next morning, I met Mia at the coffee shop. Got there early, ordered the strongest black coffee they had, and grabbed a corner table where we could talk without being overheard. Hadn't slept more than an hour. My eyes probably looked like I'd been on a 3-day bender. Mia showed up right on time, looking confused and worried. She was Avery's friend first. They'd known each other since college, but we'd gotten close over the years too. Always thought she was straight up, one of the good ones. What's going on? She asked, sitting down with her fancy latte. You look like absolute shit, Tyler. How long have you known? I asked, cutting right to it. No point in small talk. Her face changed immediately. Got all defensive. Known what? About Avery cheating on me. She froze. The look on her face told me everything I needed to know before she even opened her mouth. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Cut the crap, Mia, I said, keeping my voice low but firm. I saw the texts. I know she's been seeing some guy for 6 months. During her late shifts at work. Mia set her cup down slowly, looked around like she was hoping for an escape route. Finally, she sighed. Listen, I found out a month ago, she admitted quietly. I saw them together at that hotel downtown. The Hyatt. I was there for a work thing and saw them in the lobby. Kissing. My stomach dropped even though I already knew. Hearing it confirmed by someone else made it real in a way the texts hadn't. A month, I repeated. You've known for a month and helped me plan a proposal? Mia looked away, guilt all over her face. I confronted her about it that same day. She swore it wasn't serious. Said it was just a physical thing. That she was going to end it. And you believe that bullshit? She's been my friend for 10 years, Tyler. She was crying, saying she made a mistake, said she loved you but was frustrated that you hadn't proposed yet. I almost laughed at that. So it's my fault she's been fucking someone else for 6 months. I didn't say that, Mia shot back. I told her she needed to end it and come clean with you. She promised she would. When exactly? After the holidays? That was her plan, right? Mia looked confused. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots I'd taken. Her face got paler and paler as she scrolled through them. I didn't know about any of this, she whispered. She told me it was just a fling. These messages, they're talking about a future together. About telling you after Christmas. Yeah, Merry fucking Christmas to me, I said, taking my phone back. So you knew she was cheating, but helped me buy a ring anyway? What kind of friend does that? I kept telling her to end it, Mia insisted, tears forming in her eyes. She swore she would. I honestly thought if you proposed, she'd realize what she was risking. That she'd choose you. I stared at her, letting that sink in. So you used me as some kind of test? To see if she'd pick me over him? That's not... I wasn't thinking of it that way. Who is he? I asked. Do you know? She shook her head. Some guy from her company's LA office. Derek something. They met at a conference about 6 months ago. That tracked with the timeline. Avery had gone to LA for a marketing conference back in June. Came back all energized about new connections she'd made. Guess she wasn't talking about professional ones. Does anyone else know? I asked. Not that I'm aware of. Look, Tyler, I'm so sorry. I should have told you the moment I saw them together. She's been my best friend since college. I thought I knew her. I thought she'd do the right thing. We sat in silence for a minute. I already knew what to do. Finally, Mia asked, "What are you going to do?" I pulled out my phone again and showed her the email I'd drafted the night before. It was addressed to Avery's parents, her sister, her close friends, and several of her coworkers. Attached were screenshots of the most damning messages and her photos that she sent. That's brutal, Mia said quietly. You know what's brutal? I replied. Planning to propose to someone while they're planning a life with someone else. Mia didn't argue with that. When are you going to send it? Today, after I talk to her. I already called Jake this morning. He's going to help me move my stuff out while she's at yoga. You're leaving? Just like that. What would you do? I asked. Stay and try to work it out? She's been lying to my face for 6 months, Mia. Talking shit about me to this guy. Planning to dump me after the holidays. What's there to work out? She had no answer for that. Before I left, I asked one more thing. Did you help her? Cover for her at all? Mia shook her head firmly. Number I never lied for her. When she told me she was with me on those nights, I didn't know she was using me as an alibi. I only found out when I saw them together. I nodded, wanting to believe her. I'm gonna need the spare key back, I said, holding out my hand. She dug in her purse and handed it over. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. Yeah, I said, standing up. Me too. I spent the next few hours in autopilot mode. Called work, told them I needed a personal day. Called Jake, filled him in on the situation. Called my landlord, got my name taken off the lease. Called the bank, separated our joint account. Jake showed up with his truck around 11. Avery was at her regular Saturday morning yoga class, the one real thing in her schedule of lies. We worked fast, just grabbing my essential stuff. Clothes, electronics, personal items, left all the furniture except my desk and gaming chair, left the TV we'd bought together, left the fancy kitchen stuff she'd picked out. By noon, we'd loaded up Jake's truck and my car with everything I couldn't bear to leave behind. 3 years of my life packed up in a couple hours. You sure about this, man? Jake asked as we did a final sweep of the apartment. Not that I blame you, but it's pretty final. That's the point, I said. I'd left my key on the kitchen counter, along with a note that just said, I know everything. We'll be back at 1 to talk. Be there. Jake helped me unload my stuff at his place, offered to stay for moral support, but I told him I needed to do this last part alone. At exactly 1 p.m., I walked back into the apartment. Avery was already there, eyes wide, tension radiating off her. She'd seen the missing stuff. She'd seen my key on the counter. She knew something was coming. What's going on? She asked, her voice tight. Why are your things missing? Why is your key on the counter? I didn't bother with words. I pulled out my phone, hit play, and let her own voice destroy her. Her sweet little message to Derek filled the room, full of I miss yous, and how she couldn't wait to see him again. She froze, color draining from her face. I can explain, she started, already scrambling. Don't bother. I cut her off coldly. I saw it all. The texts, the photos, your little plan to dump me after the holidays. Mia filled in the blanks this morning. Her eyes flared. Mia told you? Like that was the biggest betrayal. Not the fact she'd been screwing another guy for 6 months, but that her friend had enough of a conscience to spill. She didn't have to. I saw your phone. Your boyfriend called 4 times yesterday. Guess he forgot the part about deleting the evidence. That's when she switched gears. Face hardening. Defense mode. Look, it's not what you think, she snapped. We were never official, Tyler. I don't have a ring on my finger, do I? I waited for you to commit for 3 years. What was I supposed to do? Just sit around forever while you made up your mind. I had to consider my options. I laughed. A low, sharp laugh. Options? That's what you call it? Exploring options by sneaking around like a coward? I stepped closer, dropping my voice. You think you were some victim of my indecision? I was going to propose to you last night. Her face cracked, confusion and regret bleeding through. What? I pulled out the ring box and tossed it onto the coffee table. Yeah, I had it all planned. Dinner at Vincenzo's, ring in my pocket. Mia helped set it up. But then your phone rang, and I got a front row seat to reality. So congratulations, Avery. You didn't get the ring because you were too busy getting bent over in hotel rooms by Derek. She reached for the box like it could somehow fix everything. Like it was a lifeline she was about to drown without. We can fix this, she said weakly. It was a mistake. He didn't mean anything to me. I moved the box out of her reach. 6 months of mistakes isn't a mistake, it's a lifestyle. And you lived it well. Her fake tears dried up fast. Anger took over. So that's it? 3 years and you're throwing it all away over one little indiscretion? Little? I scoffed. Avery, this wasn't some drunken accident. This was planned. Coordinated. You played house with me and played mistress with him. You insulted me behind my back. You lied over and over. That's not little. That's you showing me exactly who you are. I pulled out a folder and dropped it onto the table. I'm off the lease. Utilities. Done. Joint account? Closed. Your half is already sitting in your personal account. I'm gone. Her face crumbled. You're just leaving? After everything? Now that I know you were going to propose, we can fix this. I laughed, bitter and sharp. Yeah, convenient timing. Now that the safety net's gone, you suddenly want to work it out. No, Avery. There's no we anymore. There's just you and your regrets. She stepped closer, reaching for me like I was still that idiot who would have fallen for it. You don't mean that. You love me. I know you do. I stared at her, calm, solid. That person I love doesn't exist anymore. I headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and check your email in about 5 minutes, along with your family, friends, and coworkers. Her face went pale. What did you do? Just shared the truth, I replied. Something you should have done from the beginning if you were so unhappy with me not committing to you. Her expression changed to panic. You didn't. Tyler, please don't do this. I'll do anything. Should have thought of that before you started fucking Derek from LA, I said, and walked out the door. In my car, I hit send on the email, then turned off my phone. It was done. 3 years. Over just like that. And the craziest part, under all the anger and hurt, there was this weird sense of relief, like I just escaped something much worse than a breakup. The next 48 hours were a straight up blur. After I sent that email and turned off my phone, I drove around aimlessly for hours. Ended up at some random park on the other side of town, just sitting in my car staring at nothing like a complete zombie. When I finally turned my phone back on around midnight, it exploded with notifications. Texts, calls, voicemails, emails, everyone weighing in on the nuclear bomb I just dropped on Avery's life. Her sister called me 7 times, leaving progressively angrier voicemails. Her parents each sent these long, disappointed texts about how this isn't how adults handle problems, and how I should have discussed this privately. Fuck that noise. Where was all this family concern when their precious daughter was cheating for 6 months? Mia texted that Avery was completely destroyed and hasn't stopped crying. Cool story. Don't care. The most interesting responses came from her coworkers. Turns out good old Derek from LA wasn't just some random dude. He was a senior director at her company who was very much engaged to another woman. And now everyone at their company knew he'd been banging Avery behind his fiance's back. Career suicide for both of them. One of Avery's work friends actually thanked me. Said Derek had been using his position to pressure younger female employees for years, but no one had proof until now. Jake let me crash at his place. Set me up in his spare room with an air mattress and some sheets. Brought me a 6-pack and didn't ask questions when I drank it all in one sitting. You need anything else, man? He asked. A time machine would be great, I said. Go back and never meet her in the first place. Jake just nodded. You did the right thing. Walking away. Most guys would have dragged it out. Tried to fix things. Nothing to fix, I mumbled. Can't unfuck another dude. I spent Sunday applying for transfers at work. My company had offices in Seattle and Austin. Figured a fresh start might be the only way to get past this mess. Next day, things got even more insane. Derek's fiancée had seen the emails and screenshots I'd sent around. She'd apparently confronted him, and he'd tried to blame everything on Avery. Said she was obsessed with him and wouldn't take no for an answer. Classic move. Throw your side piece under the bus to save your own ass. The fiancée wasn't buying it, though. She contacted me directly, asking for everything I had on their affair. I sent her the whole folder of screenshots and pictures. She thanked me, then proceeded to send them to his entire family, friend group, and their wedding party. 2 lives imploding for the price of 1. Can't say I felt bad about it. Meanwhile, Avery was doing damage control with everyone she knew. According to mutual friends, she was telling people we were practically broken up anyway, and on a break in her mind. Said I was never around and always gaming with the boys instead of paying attention to her. Such bullshit. I played maybe 3 to 4 hours a week with Jake, tops. The rest of the time, I was either working or doing stuff with her. Then Friday night, the night before I was set to drive to Seattle, she showed up at Jake's again. This time she was sober, and Jake called me to deal with it. She says she's not leaving until she talks to you, he said. Want me to call the cops? No, I sighed. I'll handle it. I went downstairs to the building entrance where Jake was keeping her in the lobby. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. Hair a mess, eyes puffy from crying, wearing what looked like pajama pants and one of my old hoodies she must have found at the apartment. 5 minutes, I said flatly. That's all you get. We sat on a bench outside Jake's building. It was cold, but I didn't invite her up. No way was she setting foot in my temporary safe space. You're really leaving? She asked, wrapping her arms around herself. Yep. So that's it? You're just going to run away? I laughed. That's rich coming from the person who was planning to dump me after Christmas. How is this any different? Except the timeline got moved up. She flinched. Those texts, it wasn't serious with Derek. We were just talking. I wasn't actually going to leave you. Bullshit, I said. I saw everything, Avery. The hotel meetups. The plans for him to move here. All of it. I was confused, she tried. You weren't proposing. We weren't moving forward. I thought maybe you didn't want the same things I did. So instead of talking to me about it, you decided to fuck some other guy? That was your solution? She started crying again. God, the tears. Like a faucet she could turn on and off. I made a mistake, she sobbed. The biggest mistake of my life. I love you, Tyler. Only you. Derek was just, I don't know, an escape? A distraction? A distraction, I repeated. For 6 months? That's a hell of a distraction, Avery. Please, she grabbed my hand. I pulled it away immediately. Please don't leave like this. We can work through this. Go to counseling. Start over. I'll do anything. Would you have done anything if I hadn't caught you? If I'd proposed that night like I planned? Would you have come clean then? She hesitated just a second too long. That's what I thought, I said, standing up. Your 5 minutes are up. Tyler, wait, she called as I walked back to the building entrance. What about the ring? Can I at least have that to remember you by? I stopped, not believing what I was hearing. Turned around slowly. You want the engagement ring I was going to propose with? The one you didn't get because you were too busy cheating on me? That ring? She nodded, tears still streaming down her face. I was going to say yes, you know. I always wanted to marry you. Just not enough to stop fucking another guy, right? I shook my head in disbelief. Goodbye, Avery. You'll regret this, she called after me as I walked inside. No one will ever love you like I did. Yeah, thank God for that. I left for Seattle at dawn the next day. Didn't tell anyone except Jake when exactly I was leaving, afraid Avery might try to make some dramatic last stand. The ring went to a pawn shop. Got less than half what I paid for it, but whatever. At least it was gone. Mostly, I felt free. Like I'd escaped something worse than just a bad relationship. I'd escaped a life with someone who could lie to my face for months while planning to leave me all along. Sometimes the trash takes itself out. You just have to be willing to let it go. The drive to Seattle was long as hell, but weirdly therapeutic. Just me, the open road, and a playlist Jake made for me called Fuck Cheaters. Real creative, right? 10 hours of angry breakup songs and enough gas station coffee to kill a small animal. I rolled into Seattle late Saturday night in the pouring rain, of course, and found my temporary apartment. It was this tiny studio above a Thai restaurant downtown, furnished with the most basic IKEA crap you can imagine. First week passed in a blur of new faces, new projects, and takeout dinners eaten alone in my sad little apartment. I'd mute my phone during the day, but every night I'd check it to find more messages from Avery or about Avery. Mia texted that Avery lost her job. Apparently, the whole Derek situation blew up spectacularly at work. He was engaged to the daughter of one of the company's biggest clients, so guess who got thrown under the bus? Not the senior director with connections, that's for sure. Jake reported that Avery had shown up at our old apartment complex looking for me, even though she knew I'd moved cities. Told the neighbors I was having a mental health crisis and had run away during treatment. What the actual fuck? Her sister found my new email somehow and sent this long, guilt-trippy message about how Avery was in a really dark place and how I should at least talk to her for closure. Closure my ass. She had 6 months of dick appointments for closure while I was planning a proposal. Then Friday night happened. I was just getting back to my apartment when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered, "Hello? Tyler?" It was Avery, slurring her words. Drunk, dialing me from yet another new number. I should have hung up, but some masochistic part of me wanted to hear what new bullshit she'd come up with. "What do you want, Avery?" "I'm coming to Seattle," she announced. "I got a job interview there next week. We should meet up." My blood ran cold. No way was this happening. No way was she following me across state lines. "Don't," I said firmly. "Don't come here. Don't try to find me. We're done. You can't tell me where I can and can't go," she slurred. "It's a free country, and Seattle's a big city. Maybe I want to live there too." Avery, listen to me closely. We are never getting back together. Never. If you come here trying to find me, I'll get a restraining order. She laughed, this ugly, bitter sound. For what? I haven't done anything wrong. Harassment, I said. I have hundreds of texts and calls from you and your friends after being repeatedly told to stop contacting me. That sobered her up quick. You wouldn't try me. She went quiet, then she promised she'd prove she'd changed, said she'd move to Seattle, stay out of my way, and wait until I was ready to talk. I shut that down fast. I wouldn't be. This wasn't some movie where a grand gesture fixes everything. It was over. She tried again, but I hung up and blocked her number. I texted Jake about her job interview and how she might move to Seattle. He called me right away, calling it some fatal attraction shit. I agreed. Was she serious? With Avery, who knew? But I wasn't taking chances. I changed my address to a P.O. box and made sure my name wasn't on my sublet lease. She'd have a hard time finding me. Jake warned me to be careful. Understatement of the year. And true to her drunk-ass promises, Avery did come to Seattle the following week. Posted a bunch of pics on Instagram at tourist spots. One was even at a coffee shop 2 blocks from my office. But I wasn't about to let her catch me off guard. I switched up my routes to work, kept my head on a swivel, and avoided the usual downtown spots where she might accidentally show up. I wasn't scared, just smart. No way was I giving her a chance to corner me. Then one evening, the doorbell rang. My building had tight security, so I figured it couldn't be her. I checked the peephole, and there she was. Avery, dressed to impress, heels, makeup, everything on point. Like she was auditioning for some twisted reunion scene. She had the nerve to say that the guy downstairs let her in, and she just wanted 5 minutes to talk. I didn't answer. Didn't blink. Let her talk to the damn door. She kept going, rambling about her job interview, how it went well, how she was planning to move to Seattle and start over. Like we could just hit reset. Like her betrayal didn't exist. I didn't say a word. Silence speaks louder. Then she said she brought something for me. I heard paper rustling. Saw a folded note slide under the door. She lingered a second, waiting for a reaction. She got none. When her footsteps finally faded, I picked it up. A therapy receipt. 1 session. 1. Dated 2 days after I left Portland. With a pathetic little note scribbled on it about getting help and doing whatever it takes to fix things. I laughed my ass off and threw it in the trash. But now she knew where I lived. That crossed a line. She invaded my space. That was the last straw. That night, I shot an email to my landlord. Told him I needed to break the lease for safety reasons. By Friday, I locked down a new place. Secure building, underground parking, key fob access to every door and elevator. More expensive than my old place, but worth every damn cent for peace of mind. I moved that weekend. Fast, clean, quiet. Only Jake and my boss knew the address. No forwarding info, no clues. I cut the loose ends. Clean break. I'll update you guys if anything new pops up. Update. Hey guys, just hit my 1-year anniversary in Seattle, and things are looking up. Met that chick Claire about 6 months ago at this coffee shop near my new place. Yeah, I know. Another coffee shop. Life's full of weird little patterns. She's nothing like Avery. Software engineer, straight shooter, zero drama. Takes her coffee black and laughs at my dumb jokes. We're taking it slow, but it feels real, you know? Told her about the Avery situation on our 3rd date. Figured she deserved the full picture. She just nodded and said she's paranoid. And that was that. Haven't heard from Avery in months now. Last I heard from Jake, she moved to Chicago. Sometimes I think about how close I came to proposing to someone who was living a double life, and it still feels like I dodged a bullet. The ring money I got back from the pawn shop? Used it for a weekend trip with Claire to this cabin on the coast? Way better investment than a diamond for someone who didn't deserve it. Story 3. This story is titled, Just 2 months before my wedding, my brother knocked up my fiancée and wanted to marry her. So I cut everyone out of my life. So I, 30 male, guess I'm here because I need to get this mess off my chest. 3 years ago, my life did a complete 180. And not in some motivational, wow, everything fell into place kind of way. No, I'm talking about betrayal. The kind that rips apart everything you thought you knew. It started slow, like a crack you don't notice until the whole wall collapses. Back then, I was engaged to this woman, Ava, 27 female. 5 years together. We had the kind of dynamic that made sense. We both worked hard, played hard when we could, and genuinely enjoyed each other's company. So naturally, after 5 years, I put a ring on it. Wedding planning was stressful, sure, but things were okay. I was pulling extra hours at work to make sure we could afford the wedding we wanted, and Eva, well, she was figuring things out after losing her job. That part was tough on her. She tied a lot of her identity to her career, and getting fired hit her hard. I did my best to support her, and after a couple of weeks, she found a pottery class to keep herself busy. Cool, right? I thought so. Now, this is where things start to get weird. Eva's pottery hobby should have been a harmless way to distress. But then my brother, Kyle, 27 male, entered the picture. Kyle and I, let's just say we're built differently. I'm the straight-laced, career-focused guy. Kyle's the charming screw-up who always managed to land on his feet, no matter how badly he messed up. As it turned out, Kyle was also in the same pottery class. What were the odds, right? At first, I thought nothing of it. He'd make jokes about how artsy Eva was compared to me, and I laughed along. I mean, it's Kyle, always the joker, rarely serious. But then he started visiting more, a lot more. At first, it seemed innocent. He'd swing by after their class and stick around to hang out. Then it became dinner visits, where he'd conveniently show up with some random excuse. I was in the area, or I had leftovers I thought you'd like. Okay, fine. Then, there was a Friday night, when Ava skipped our usual movie date to hang out with Kyle instead. That's when the alarm started ringing in my head. I asked her about it, and she brushed me off. He's like a little brother to me, she said. You're overthinking it. I let it go because I didn't want to seem paranoid, but Kyle's visits didn't stop. They increased. He was at the house more than I was some weeks, and when I confronted him about why he was always hanging around, he just laughed. What? I'm not allowed to bond with my future sister-in-law? He said. His tone was playful, but something felt off. Fast forward to 2 months before the wedding. I was working insane hours, trying to juggle wedding expenses and everything else, while Eva and Kyle were basically inseparable. They'd hang out on weekends, go to art galleries, and even hit up new restaurants. It started to feel like Eva was dating Kyle more than me. One night, I came home from work exhausted. I opened the fridge looking for something quick to eat, only to find that the takeout leftovers I'd been saving were gone. Kyle had eaten them. Again. It's just food, Eva said when I brought it up, laughing like I was the one being ridiculous. That was it. I couldn't keep ignoring the nagging feeling in my gut. I asked Eva point blank if something was going on between her and Kyle. She got defensive. How can you even think that? She said. He's your brother, for God's sake. Her reaction left me feeling guilty for doubting her, but something still didn't sit right. Then came that night. I'd been on a business trip for a few days and came home early to surprise Eva. I picked up her favorite takeout on the way and was looking forward to spending some quality time together. But when I pulled into the driveway, Kyle's car was parked outside. Now, normally, this wouldn't have been a big deal. Kyle dropped by unannounced all the time, but it was late, almost 11 p.m., and his car being there at that hour didn't make sense. My gut churned as I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was silent except for faint laughter coming from upstairs. The living room was empty, but the TV was on its flickering light. My eyes were immediately drawn to the cups scattered across the floor. I set the takeout on the counter, my hands shaking slightly. I told myself it was nothing, that I was overthinking it again, but I couldn't shake the feeling. If he is here, why are they not in the living room? I kid you not. In that moment, part of me wanted to turn around and leave, but another part, the part that needed undeniable proof, pushed me forward. I needed to assure myself that there was nothing between them. I walked upstairs, my heart pounding with every step. As I reached the bedroom door, I heard a voice, Kyle's voice. I pushed the door open, and there they were, Eva and Kyle together, in my bed. They didn't even notice me standing there. Normally, I'm the type to keep my cool, but this was beyond anything I could have prepared for. My fiancée, the woman I was planning to marry in 2 months, was in bed with my own brother. I didn't think. I just acted. Without a word, I stepped into the room, marched up to the bed, and grabbed Kyle by the back of his neck and yanked him away. The look of pure shock on his face was satisfying. He turned to me, and the confusion quickly morphed into straight-up terror. I didn't even glance at Eva. Kyle started stumbling over himself, mumbling some half-baked apologies, but I wasn't hearing it. Without a second thought, my fist connected with his face, and the crunch of his nose breaking was both satisfying and infuriating. "Get the hell out of my house!" I shouted, my voice shaking with rage. Kyle tried to shield himself, but I wasn't done. I hit him again, this time knocking him to the floor. Blood dripped from his nose as he scrambled to his feet, mumbling, "I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean for this to happen." "You didn't mean for this to happen?" I yelled. "You're in my bed with my fiancé. Get the fuck out of my house." Kyle, being the coward he is, bolted, clutching his face as he ran out the door. That left Eva, sitting on the bed, sobbing. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like?" I said, glaring into her soul. She tried to plead, saying it was a mistake, that she wants to explain. I was completely disgusted. "You've got 5 minutes to pack your things and get out," I said. "And if you're not gone by then, I'll throw you out myself." She cried harder, begging me to listen, but I didn't care. I watched as she grabbed a suitcase and shoved whatever she could into it. When her time was up, I opened the door and stood there, waiting. She froze at the door, looking at me while sobbing and begging me to listen to her and give her a chance. But I didn't have chances to give. She used them all. I grabbed her hand, slipped the engagement ring off her finger, and pushed her toward the door. She tried to hold her ground, begging me to change my mind, but I was done. I yanked the door open and shoved her outside. She stumbled onto the porch, still sobbing and screaming for another chance. I didn't even bother looking back as I slammed the door in her face. That night, I sat alone, surrounded by the wreckage of my life. My plan of getting married vanished. My brother was a traitor. My world had been flipped upside down. I barely slept that night. My brain wouldn't shut up, running through every interaction, every red flag I missed. By morning, I was still furious, but the shock started wearing off, and reality began to sink in. I wasn't just dealing with a breakup. This was betrayal on a whole other level. And it wasn't just Eva. It was my brother, Kyle, the guy who should have had my back. I decided I needed to let my parents know what happened. Kyle's always been their golden boy, but I figured they'd at least understand how messed up this was. So I called them. My dad answered, and I just laid it all out. Kyle's been sleeping with Eva, and I caught them last night. There was this long pause, like he didn't know how to respond. Then he said, "Are you sure?" That pissed me off. Sure? Did he think I made this up? I told him I didn't need proof because I saw it with my own eyes. He sighed and said he'd talk to Kyle, but he didn't sound surprised, which threw me off. Then my mom got on the phone. I didn't even get a chance to explain before she started with her usual Kyle defending nonsense. "Oh, honey, I'm sure it's not as bad as it seems. Maybe it was a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding? Yeah, because accidentally ending up in bed with my fiancé happens all the time. I snapped and told her to stop making excuses for him. I wasn't calling for her to play mediator. I wanted her to hear what her precious son had done. But then she said, "Kyle's been really struggling lately. He didn't mean to hurt you." Struggling? What does that even mean? Struggling to keep his pants on? I couldn't believe it. She was already bending over backward to justify what he'd done, like I was the one being unreasonable. I ended the call before I said something I'd regret. My dad texted me later saying he'd try to talk to Kyle, but I wasn't holding my breath. A couple of weeks passed, and I didn't hear a word from Kyle. Honestly, I was glad. I didn't trust myself not to knock him dead if he tried to explain. Instead, I threw myself into work. I figured keeping busy would help me block out the noise in my head. After a few months from that doomed night, my phone rang. It was Kyle. I almost didn't answer, but I wanted to hear what kind of excuse he could possibly have. His voice was shaky, like he was nervous. "Look, man, I screwed up. I don't know how it happened, but I didn't mean for it to go this far." I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. Didn't mean for it to go this far? So what, sleeping with my fiancé was some kind of accident? He started stammering, saying it was complicated, that Eva was unhappy, and they connected. Connected? I hung up before he could keep going. He texted me the next day, saying he and Eva wanted to meet. He claimed they had something important to tell me. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I told them to meet me at a coffee shop. I wasn't about to let them step foot in my house again. When I got there, they were already sitting at a table. Eva looked miserable, and Kyle just looked uncomfortable. I didn't sit down. I stood there with my arms crossed and said, "What do you want?" Eva looked at Kyle like she was waiting for him to speak first. He cleared his throat and said, "We're together now. And Eva's pregnant." I swear, it felt like the air got sucked out of the room. I just stared at them, waiting for one of them to say, "Just kidding?" But they didn't. Kyle kept talking, saying how they wanted to make it work and how they needed my blessing. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It wasn't even a funny laugh. It was that kind of laugh you let out when you're so disgusted you don't know what else to do. "You want my blessing? Are you kidding me?" Eva tried to jump in, saying how sorry she was and how they didn't plan for this to happen. I cut her off. "You didn't plan for this? So what? One thing just led to another? Save it." I walked out. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I just left because staying any longer would have made things worse. That night, my mom called me again. I ignored it. Then she texted, "You need to let this go. It's time to forgive your brother and move forward." Forgive him? For what, torching my life? I texted back, "Lose my number." She didn't take it well. The next morning, she showed up at my house. She was waiting in her car when I left for work. I told her to go home, but she started crying and saying how much this was tearing the family apart. I didn't budge. "Maybe you should have thought about that before siding with Kyle," I said. She tried to argue that she wasn't taking sides, but her actions said otherwise. She even tried to spin Eva's pregnancy as a blessing in disguise. I told her if she wanted a relationship with me, she needed to stop enabling Kyle and Eva. She didn't give me a straight answer, so I walked away. At that time, the only way to move forward for me was to put as much distance as I could between myself and the circus that was my family. So, I made the decision to leave. I didn't just mean leaving them emotionally. I packed my life up and physically left the city. It wasn't an impulsive move. I spent weeks planning it. I started looking for job opportunities in different cities, ones that would allow me to start fresh. When I finally landed a solid offer, I took it without hesitation. I didn't tell anyone except my dad, and even then, it was more of a heads up than a conversation. "I'm leaving," I said. "Don't tell anyone where I'm going." I told him this clearly and simply. He tried to talk me out of it, saying I didn't need to cut everyone off completely, but I wasn't in the mood for his half-measured advice. My mom had already shown where her loyalty lay, and Kyle? He wasn't worth a single word from me. The move was harder than I thought it'd be. Packing up your life and leaving behind the place you've lived for years. It's not easy, but I kept telling myself it was the only way. I found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood in a new city and settled in. It wasn't much, A one-bedroom with a tiny kitchen and a view of the parking lot. But it was mine. No reminders of the past, no shared spaces tainted by betrayal. Starting over felt weird at first. I was so used to being surrounded by people I knew, people who knew me. In the new city, I was just a face in the crowd, which was both liberating and lonely. I focused on my new job to keep myself distracted. My coworkers were nice enough, but I wasn't exactly in the mood to make friends. One thing I didn't expect was how quiet it would be. No calls, no texts, no awkward run-ins at family gatherings. At least I didn't have to deal with Kyle's antics, my mom's guilt trips, or Eva's fake apologies. I did get the occasional text from my dad, usually short updates like, "Hope you're doing well," or "Miss you." He never pushed too hard, which I appreciated. But my mom? Radio silence. Not a single call or message. I guess she figured I was the one who needed to come crawling back. By the time I hit the 1-year mark in the new city, I felt like a completely different person. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. I'd gotten a promotion at work, made some solid friends, and even started saving for a better apartment. But here's the thing about moving on. Just when you think you've left it all behind, the past has a way of sneaking back in. One day, out of nowhere, I got a text from my dad. It wasn't his usual, "Hope you're doing well" message. This one was different. It said, "Your mom's asking for your number. She wants to talk." I stared at the screen for a long time. All I could think about was what could she possibly have to say after all this time. I texted back, "Tell her I'm not interested." My dad didn't push, and neither did she. But that text shook me more than I wanted to admit. I thought I was done with all of it, but clearly they weren't. And then came an unexpected visit. It was a regular Tuesday evening, nothing special. I had just gotten back from work when I heard a knock at the door. At first, I thought it might be a delivery mix-up, or a neighbor needing something. I wasn't expecting visitors. I didn't exactly keep an open-door policy in my new life. When I opened the door, I froze. Standing there, looking like life had dragged her through a blender, was Eva. And next to her, holding her hand, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 2 or 3, but even at a glance, I knew whose kid she was. The resemblance to Kyle was glaring. Same eyes, same smirk, same everything. I didn't say anything at first, and neither did Eva. She just stood there, looking worn out. Her clothes were shabby, and she looked thinner, almost sickly. It was like seeing a ghost of the person I used to know. The little girl, though, was staring up at me, probably wondering why this stranger looked so surprised. Finally, I broke the silence. "What are you doing here?" My tone wasn't exactly welcoming, but come on. What was I supposed to feel seeing her on my doorstep after all these years? Eva's eyes welled up with tears, and her voice was shaky. I didn't know where else to go. "Can I come in?" Every instinct I had was screaming no, but I couldn't just slam the door in her face, not with a kid standing there. So, against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let them in. I led them to the couch and sat down in the chair across from them, keeping as much distance as the room would allow. Eva was fidgeting, and the little girl was sitting quietly beside her, clutching a stuffed animal. I offered them water, more out of politeness than actual care, but Eva shook her head. "So?" I asked, leaning back. "What do you want?" She pulled out an envelope from her bag and handed it to me. I hesitated before taking it, but once I saw the handwriting on the front, I knew exactly what it was. My mom's handwriting. I opened it and started reading. It was, as expected, a guilt trip in letter form. My mom wrote about how Eva and the child, her grandchild, were struggling because Kyle had abandoned them. She said it was my responsibility to step up and help, since I was the only stable one left in the family. She went on about how family takes care of each other, even when things go wrong. By the time I finished, I was furious. I tossed the letter onto the coffee table and looked at Eva. "And what? You thought this was a good idea? Just show up and let my mom guilt me into fixing this mess?" Eva's tears started flowing as usual. "I didn't know what else to do," she said. "Kyle's gone. He left us 3 months ago. I tried to make it work, but I can't. Your mom's been helping me, but now she says she can't do it anymore. She said you'd—" Her voice cracked, and she didn't finish the sentence. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "Let me get this straight. Kyle bails, my mom decides she's done helping, and somehow I'm supposed to swoop in and save the day? Why would you even think that's an option?" She wiped her face with her sleeve, looking completely defeated. "Because I have no one else. I don't have a job, I don't have savings. Everything I had went into trying to make it work with Kyle, and now he's gone. I'm desperate." I looked at the little girl. She was just sitting there quietly, her big eyes darting between Eva and me. She had no idea what was going on, and honestly, that made it harder. The kid didn't ask for any of this. I took a deep breath. "I feel bad for her," I said, nodding toward the girl. "She doesn't deserve this. But let me be clear. I'm not the guy to fix your problems. You made your bed with Kyle. You knew exactly who he was when you got with him. And now you're here expecting me to clean up his mess? Number not happening. Eva started sobbing, full-on ugly crying. I know I messed up, but I didn't think he'd leave us like this. I thought he'd at least stick around for her. I didn't have it in me to argue anymore. I stood up and grabbed my wallet from the kitchen counter. I pulled out a couple of $100 and handed it to her. Here, this is all I'm giving you. Use it for gas, food, whatever. But I can't help you beyond this. You need to figure this out on your own. She took the money with shaking hands, still crying. Thank you, she whispered. After a few awkward moments, she picked up her bag and held the little girl's hand. I'm sorry, she said. I barely heard her. I didn't respond. I just opened the door and waited for them to leave. As they walked out, the little girl turned around and gave me a tiny wave. I didn't know what to do, so I just nodded. When the door closed, I leaned against it and let out a long breath. My head was spinning. Seeing Eva again, seeing that kid, reading that letter, it was like all the progress I'd made in the past 3 years to move on with this chaos got dragged back to square one. I sat down on the couch and stared at the envelope on the table. My mom had some nerve. After everything that happened, she still thought she could guilt me into playing savior for Kyle's mess. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Did she really believe I owed them anything? The next morning, I called my dad. I already knew my dad had given Eva my address, but I wanted to hear it straight from him. So I called him and got right to the point. Why the hell did he think it was okay to share my location with her after I told him not to? What exactly did he expect me to do for Eva and her kid? There was this awkward pause on his end. I'm sorry, son. I really am. He sounded regretful, but that didn't make it any better. He explained that they had tried to help Eva as much as they could, but with Kyle gone, their hands were tied. Then he dropped the real reason. Your mom begged me to give her your address. She thought maybe if you saw her after all this time, you'd want to help her out. She has nowhere else to go. Hearing that only pissed me off more. I straight up asked him why he thought I'd ever help someone like her. I reminded him exactly what Eva did. She betrayed me with my own brother, hurt me in ways I couldn't even explain. And now they expected me to just step in and play savior? He said he understood why I was upset, but then he pulled the family card. That was it for me. I told him we were done. I trusted him to be different from my mom, to actually have my back, but nope. Turns out they're all the same. Backstabbing, manipulative, and completely blind to how much they've hurt me. Did they really think I'd forget everything and just take in Kyle's kid like nothing ever happened? Unbelievable. That was it for me. My family had already betrayed me once. I wasn't going to let them pull me back into their mess. So, after Eva and her kid walked out that door, I thought I'd finally gotten rid of all the leftover drama. I mean, I'd done what I could without compromising my boundaries, gave her some cash, and sent her on her way. I wasn't happy about it, but I figured it was over. Yeah, not so much. The next day, I got a text from my dad. He said my mom wanted to talk to me. No surprise there, it was probably about Eva's visit. I ignored it. A few hours later, another text came in. She just wants to explain her side. Her side? What side could there possibly be? She'd given my address to the woman who blew up my life, all so she could guilt me into cleaning up after Kyle. I told my dad to drop it. Tell her there's nothing to explain, I wrote back. If she keeps pushing, I'm done talking to both of you. I hit send and left it at that. But of course, my mom wasn't one to take no for an answer. 2 days later, she showed up at my apartment. I got home from work, tired as hell, and there she was, sitting in her car outside my building. The second I stepped out of my car, she got out and started walking toward me. Can we talk? She asked, like she hadn't completely bulldozed the boundaries I'd set. I sighed. Mom, I'm not doing this. Go home. She ignored me and started in on her speech. I know you're upset, but I had to do something. Eva and her daughter are family. They need help, and you're the only one who can give it to them. Family? I snapped. You're still calling her family after what she did? And Kyle? He's the reason they're in this mess, not me. Go find him if you want to play savior. She shook her head like I was the one being unreasonable. Kyle's not around, and you know that. He's not reliable, but you are. That little girl doesn't deserve to suffer because of her father's mistakes. I stared at her, trying to wrap my head around what she was saying. You've got some nerve, I said finally. After everything Kyle did to me, you really think I owe him or Eva anything? I don't care how much you twist it. This isn't my responsibility. Do you think I want to ask you for help? She said. I don't, but Jessie is your niece. She's innocent in all this. I thought you'd understand. I couldn't believe it. You're unbelievable, I said. You didn't think about me when Kyle was screwing over my life. You didn't think about me when you sided with him after the wedding got called off. And now, because he bailed, you think I should swoop in and fix it? Number not happening. She tried again, this time with tears. I just want what's best for Jessie. She's your blood. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. And whose fault is it that Jessie's in this situation? It's Kyle's. You want to help her? Go find him. Tell him to step up and be a father. But don't come to me. I'm not your backup plan. At that point, my neighbors were starting to glance over, probably wondering why this middle-aged woman was crying in the parking lot while her son was visibly pissed. I didn't want to make a scene, so I turned to leave. That's when my mom grabbed my arm. Please, she begged, don't do this. I yanked my arm away and looked her dead in the eye. I'm not doing this bullshit. If you can't respect that, don't call me again. I went inside and locked the door. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Calls, texts, voicemails. I didn't even look at them. I put my phone on silent and turned on the TV. But even then, I couldn't focus. The next morning, I called my dad. I'm done. Every time I tell you guys to leave me on my own, you keep pressing my buttons, I said the second he picked up. She showed up at my place after I told her not to, I said. And you let her think that was okay. He sighed. I didn't know she was going to do that. Yeah, well, now you do. Tell her to stay away. Both of you. I'm serious. Son, he started, but I cut him off. I'm not doing this anymore. I told you where I stand, and if any of you show up at my place again, I'll call the police. He tried to argue, saying my mom meant well, and that she was just trying to do the right thing. I hung up before he could finish. Over the next few days, I blocked my dad's number too. I was done with the constant guilt trips and justifications. It wasn't easy though. Cutting off your own parents isn't something you do lightly, but what choice did I have? They'd made it clear where their priorities were, and it wasn't with me. That's where things stand for now. Currently, I'm planning to find out what Kyle's been up to, and why he thinks he can just walk away from all this mess. I'm planning to track him down. If you're interested, I'll post an update. Final update. Alright, so here's the update some of you were waiting for. After a month from posting here, I was able to track down Kyle with the help of one of my buddies. Turns out he'd resurfaced, living a couple of towns over with some new woman. The same guy who swore he was in love with Eva, who knocked her up and married her, was now shacking up with someone else, pretending he didn't have a wife or kid. After a lot of back and forth, I decided to send Eva his address. It wasn't for her sake. It was for her kid. At least she'd have a shot at making him step up. That was the last loose end I tied up. I didn't care what happened after that. Whether Eva confronted Kyle or not, whether my mom tried to intervene again, none of it mattered. I was done. Completely done. However, something about knowing exactly where Kyle was gnawed at me. I wasn't satisfied with just passing the info along. I needed to see it for myself. Call it curiosity, call it closure, but I needed to face him one last time. Not for some grand confrontation or to get answers. I already knew the type of person he was. No, this was for me, to see the man who had shattered my life and walked away like it was nothing. So, one weekend, I drove to the address I'd been given. It was a dingy little apartment complex on the edge of a not-so-great part of town. The kind of place where you could tell people were just scraping by. Fitting, I thought. Kyle had always lived like nothing could touch him. But here he was, holed up in some dump, probably pretending life was fine. I parked a little way down the street and just watched the building for a while. It wasn't long before I spotted him. He came out with a woman who looked barely out of her 20s. She was all over him, laughing and clinging to his arm like he was the best thing since sliced bread. Kyle, as usual, looked smug, like he was on top of the world. It hit me then how little he'd changed. Same swagger, same fake charm, same dude who thought he could take whatever he wanted without consequence. The only difference now was that he wasn't my problem anymore. I didn't approach him right away. Instead, I waited until he was alone. Later that afternoon, he came out again, this time by himself, probably heading to the store or something. So I stepped out of my car and called his name. He froze, clearly not expecting to see me. Oh, hey, he said, trying to play it cool. What are you doing here? I stared him down. I found out where you've been hiding. Figured it was time we had a chat. Kyle shifted uncomfortably, his confidence fading. Look, if this is about Eva and Jessie, I already told Mom. I cut him off. This isn't about them. This is about you. Do you even realize the mess you've left behind? Or are you too busy playing house with your latest fling to care? He looked away, shoving his hands in his pockets. I didn't mean for things to get this bad, he mumbled. I just needed a break. From what? Being a dad? Being a decent human being? You're pathetic, Kyle. He tried to defend himself, spouting some nonsense about how he and Eva were never right for each other, how things got too complicated, blah, blah, blah. I didn't care. I'd heard enough excuses to last a lifetime. You don't get to walk away like this, I said, stepping closer. You have a kid, Kyle. A kid who didn't ask for any of this. And instead of stepping up, you ran. You left her and Eva to fend for themselves. Do you even feel bad about that? Kyle didn't answer. He just stood there, staring at the ground like a coward he had always been. I don't care what your excuses are, I continued. You're going to fix this. You're going to step up, take responsibility, and figure out how to support your kid. Because if you don't, I'll make damn sure you regret it. I didn't give him a chance to respond. I turned and walked back to my car, leaving him standing there, probably wondering if I'd really follow through. But I wasn't about to let him keep running without consequences. On the drive back home, I felt lighter. I finally wasn't carrying the weight of Kyle's betrayal. I'd faced him, told him exactly what I thought, and left him to deal with his own mess. In the end, all this wasn't about winning or getting revenge. For me, it was about reclaiming control, letting go of the pain, setting boundaries, and refusing to let their chaos pull me back in. I've got my own life now, one where I'm finally free of their nonsense. And for the first time in a long time, I feel at peace. That's it. That's the whole story. Thanks for sticking with me, Reddit. It feels good to finally get this off my chest. If you're dealing with toxic family or betrayal, take it from me. You're allowed to walk away. Sometimes it's the only way to move forward. Story 4. Am I the a-hole for cutting off my mom after she forged my signature and sold my apartment to pay for my brother's college? My name's Sarah, and honestly, things between me and my mom, Brenda, 52F, have always been rocky. We never really clicked, but it all started to fall apart after my parents split up when I was around 8. My dad, Bill, would have been 58M, was a good guy, but he couldn't take it anymore. Mom was always on his case about money, how he wasn't doing enough, and she just wore him down. Eventually, he had enough and left. After the divorce, I stayed with Mom, and she wasted no time playing the victim. She'd tell everyone that Dad had abandoned us, but it wasn't like that at all. He still paid child support, visited when he could, and stayed involved. But Mom would take the child support checks, look at them, and scoff, saying things like, "This is all your father thinks you're worth." It messed with me as a kid, made me feel like Dad wasn't doing enough, even though I now see that he was doing everything he could. Things got even worse when Mom met Tom, now 53M, a contractor who seemed to be doing all right for himself. They had my half-brother Jake, and after that, I felt like I disappeared. Mom would make these fancy dinners for Tom and Jake, and I was just left to fend for myself most of the time. Sometimes I'd get home and there wouldn't even be food for me in the fridge. I was like a ghost in my own home. But the real bomb dropped when I found out Mom was cheating on Tom. And it wasn't just some suspicion or a little thing I stumbled across. It was a full-blown, in-your-face kind of discovery. It all happened when I was 17, just a few months away from finishing high school. I remember the day perfectly. It was a Saturday, and I had been out with some friends. We wrapped things up earlier than I expected, so I came home a little earlier than usual. I wasn't really expecting anything, just a quiet afternoon. But the second I walked through the door, something felt off. You know when the house is too quiet? Like unnaturally quiet? That's what it was like. I called out, "Mom? Tom?" But got no answer. That's when I heard it. Voices coming from upstairs. At first, I thought maybe Mom was just talking on the phone or something, but then I heard a laugh. Not just any laugh, but the kind of laugh she used to do with Tom when they were being all flirty and gross. Except this time, it didn't sound like Tom was the one making her laugh. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't stop myself. I started creeping up the stairs, trying to make as little noise as possible. The voices were getting clearer as I got closer to her bedroom door, and then I heard it. Another voice. A man's voice. And it wasn't Tom's. I stopped right outside her door. It was cracked open just enough for me to see in without being noticed. I peeked through the gap, and that's when I saw them. My mom and some random guy. They were all over each other on the bed, wrapped up in the sheets, like they didn't have a care in the world. I froze. I couldn't even process what I was seeing at first. My brain just couldn't catch up with what my eyes were looking at. And the worst part? They were laughing. Laughing like what they were doing was no big deal, like it was just some casual Saturday afternoon thing. Suddenly, I must have made a noise because both of them looked up at the same time. My mom's face went pale. She scrambled to cover herself with the blanket, and the guy? He just smirked. He didn't even try to hide what was happening. He looked at me like I was the one who didn't belong there, like I was interrupting his day. Sarah, wait, this isn't what it looks like, Mom stammered. But it was exactly what it looked like. She was caught, and there was no talking her way out of it. I didn't even say anything. I couldn't. I just turned and ran. I bolted down the stairs and out of the house without looking back. My mind was racing. My hands were shaking, and all I could think was, what the hell did I just see? I ended up walking around the neighborhood for what felt like hours, trying to wrap my head around it. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to go back and scream at her, to tell Tom, to blow everything up. But the other part of me just felt numb, like I couldn't handle dealing with the fallout. So, I didn't go back home right away. I crashed at a friend's place for the night and didn't tell anyone what happened. I couldn't. It felt too heavy to say out loud. The next morning, I went back, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I still had to live there, still had to figure out how to exist in that house knowing what I knew. When I got back, it was like nothing had happened. Mom was in the kitchen, acting like it was just a normal day, like I hadn't just caught her cheating the day before. I didn't even acknowledge her. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and just sat there, staring at the wall. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. It was like a switch had flipped. Everything felt different, like the last shred of respect I had for her was gone. After that, things between me and her were basically done. I barely spoke to her. I kept to myself, stayed in my room most of the time, and only came out when I had to. I couldn't confront her again. I wasn't ready for the fight. But I knew one thing. I was counting down the days until I could get out of that house for good. For a few weeks, I kept my head down, going through the motions and avoiding her whenever possible. But I couldn't shake that gut feeling, the one that said I had to leave. The problem was, I didn't know where to go. Then I remembered something Dad had mentioned a while back, an apartment. He had been talking about it casually, saying he'd wanted to set something up for me when I was ready to move out after high school. At the time, I didn't think much of it. But now, it felt like a lifeline. I decided to call him. It was a Friday after school, and I'd spent the whole day building up the courage. My heart was racing as I dialed his number. When he picked up, his voice was as calm as ever, like he had no idea what was going on. Hey, kiddo, what's up? I hesitated for a second, not sure how to start. Hey, Dad, I need to talk to you about something important. There was a pause. Of course, what's going on? I took a deep breath. I want to move in with you. I can't stay with Mom anymore. There was a moment of silence, and I braced myself for his response. But when he finally spoke, it was exactly what I needed to hear. Of course you can, Sarah. We'll figure it out, okay? Don't worry. The relief that washed over me was unreal. I had been so scared he'd say no, that he wouldn't want to get involved, but that wasn't my dad. He didn't ask a million questions or make it complicated. He just said yes, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I'll come pick you up tomorrow, he added. Pack up what you need. That night, I packed everything I could fit into a few bags. I didn't even care about leaving most of my stuff behind. I just wanted to get out. Mom didn't say a word to me. She acted like she didn't notice me packing, and maybe she didn't. I think part of her just didn't care. She had Tom and Jake, and I wasn't part of her world anymore. Dad showed up the next day right on time. When I got into the car with my bags, he didn't ask for details, and I appreciated that. He just drove, and we didn't talk much on the way to his place. Once we got there, I finally felt like I could breathe again. Later that evening, after I settled into my new room, Dad knocked on the door. He came in and sat on the edge of the bed, his usual calm self. I know things have been rough, he said. But I've been thinking. You remember that apartment I mentioned a while back? I nodded, curious where this was going. Well, I was planning to give it to you once you graduated, but I think now's a good time. You deserve something of your own, especially after everything that's been happening with your mom. I was stunned. Wait, you're giving me an apartment? Yeah, he said with a small smile. It's nothing too fancy, but it's yours. You're 17 now, and I want you to have it. There's just one thing. You're still technically under your mom's custody, so her name has to be on the paperwork for now. But once you turn 18, we'll get it fully transferred to you. I couldn't believe it. I hadn't even considered that this was an option, but suddenly, it felt like my whole world was changing for the better. The idea of having my own place, away from all the chaos, was like a dream come true. We went to check it out the next weekend. It wasn't huge, but it was perfect for me. Just a small one-bedroom place, close enough to my school so I could still finish out the year, but far enough away from my mom that I could breathe. As we walked through the apartment, I couldn't help but feel like this was the beginning of something new, something better. Of course, there was the whole issue of mom's name being on the paperwork. Legally, she still had custody, so we didn't have a choice. But Dad reassured me that it was just temporary, that as soon as I turned 18, it would be all mine. I trusted him. He had never let me down before. After we signed the papers, things moved pretty quickly. I split my time between Dad's house and the new apartment, getting everything set up and ready to go. It was like I was finally taking control of my own life, and it felt amazing. Mom didn't really care. I think she was just relieved I wasn't around to remind her of what I'd caught her doing. She never asked me about the apartment, never tried to get involved. It was like I didn't exist to her anymore, which honestly was fine by me. The less I had to deal with her, the better. Living with Dad had been a breath of fresh air. He wasn't overbearing or controlling like Mom. He gave me space, but was always there when I needed him. We'd have dinner together, watch TV, and just talk about life. It felt normal, something I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was during one of those dinners when Dad brought up the apartment again. "You know, Sarah," he said, "you've done a great job balancing everything. If you ever want to rent out the apartment once you go to college, that's a solid option. It's good to have that kind of income on the side." It was like a light bulb went off in my head. The apartment was great, but once I moved to the other side of town for school, it wasn't exactly practical to keep living there. Renting it out could help me cover my expenses, especially since college wasn't cheap. I told Dad I'd think about it, but in the back of my mind, I knew it was a solid plan. I had no idea at the time that the apartment would become the center of a whole new storm later on, but for now, everything seemed like it was finally falling into place. I had Dad's support, my own place, and a future that felt like it was mine to shape. After a couple of years, my dad passed away and everything flipped upside down again. It's hard to explain what it feels like when you lose someone like that. Dad had always been my steady rock, the one person I could count on. So when he got sick, it hit me hard. Cancer is a cruel thing. It took him faster than I ever expected. One day, he was just fine, and the next, I was watching him get weaker by the day. I quit my job to take care of him. It wasn't even a question. I'd do anything for him. By the time he passed, I was completely wrecked. I'd put everything into taking care of him, and suddenly he was gone. The apartment was mine now, fully in my name, and I should have felt some relief knowing I had a place to stay. But instead, I just felt lost. That's when my mom started coming back into the picture. Now keep in mind, we hadn't spoken much after I moved out. She knew I had my own place, but she never showed any interest in my life. She never even asked how I was doing after I left her house. So, when she suddenly reached out after Dad's death, I wasn't sure what to think. Part of me wanted to believe that maybe she had changed, that maybe losing Dad had woken her up to the fact that life was too short for all the crap she'd put me through. I was grieving, so I guess I was vulnerable and wanted to believe she was trying to be there for me. At first, it seemed okay. She called me a few times, checking in, asking how I was doing. I wasn't exactly warm and welcoming, but I also didn't push her away. I was lonely, and it was nice to have someone asking about me for once, even if it was her. The conversations were pretty surface level. She never brought up anything from the past, and I didn't either. I wasn't ready to dive into all of that, and honestly, I didn't think she would ever be ready to take responsibility for her part in everything. But things started to shift not long after. It started small. One day she called and casually mentioned how Jake was getting ready for college and how expensive tuition was. I didn't think much of it at the time. I just nodded along, saying stuff like, "Yeah, college can be expensive. thinking that was the end of it. But then, every conversation after that seemed to revolve around money. She'd drop little hints about how tough things were for her and Tom, about how the economy was making it harder to get by. I wasn't really picking up on it at first because, well, I wasn't looking for it. But then she flat out asked me for help. I was wondering if you could lend us some money for Jake's college tuition, she said one day over the phone. I sat there, stunned for a second, trying to process what I just heard. My brain was still in the mode of thinking maybe this was her attempt to fix things between us, but now it felt like she was just seeing me as an ATM. Wait, what? I said, not sure if I heard her right. I mean, you've got the apartment, and with you renting it out now, you must have some extra money coming in. Jake's really struggling to get all his scholarships lined up, and Tom and I are doing our best, but she trailed off like I was supposed to jump in and offer. I didn't. I just sat there in silence for a moment, feeling like the rug had been pulled out from under me. Here I was, grieving Dad, still trying to figure out what my life looked like without him, and my mom, who I hadn't had a real relationship with in years, was asking me for money. I can't help you with that, I finally said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm just starting to get back on my feet after everything with Dad. There was an awkward silence on the line, like she wasn't expecting me to say no. I could feel the shift in her tone when she spoke again. I understand, she said, but her voice was tight. I just thought with everything going on, maybe you'd want to help your brother. I didn't take the bait. After that call, things between us got weird. She stopped calling as much, and when she did, it was short and to the point. I could feel her pulling away, and honestly, I didn't really mind. I was too drained from everything else to deal with her guilt trips. But what I didn't expect was for her to take things a step further. A few weeks after that phone call, I got a message from my tenant at the apartment. They were freaking out, saying they'd received an eviction notice. I was confused as hell because I hadn't given any notice to vacate or even thought about selling the place. So I called them back to figure out what was going on. Turns out my apartment had been sold. And not just sold. It had been sold without me even knowing about it. My first thought was that this had to be some sort of scam or mistake. There was no way this was legit, right? I immediately contacted my lawyer and we started digging into the paperwork. That's when the bomb dropped. My mom, who still had her name on the apartment paperwork from when I was underage, had forged my signature to sell the place. I was floored, completely blindsided. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I mean, who does that? Who sells their kid's apartment without telling them? I was shaking when I called her. What the hell did you do? I shouted as soon as she picked up the phone. Did you really sell my apartment? She didn't even seem fazed. I didn't think it was a big deal, she said, her voice annoyingly calm. You weren't using it, and Jake needed the money for school. It was just sitting there. I was speechless. This wasn't some small misunderstanding. This was my apartment. The place Dad gave me. The place that was supposed to be mine. And she just sold it like it was hers to do whatever with. I tried to hold it together, but I couldn't. I can't believe you did this, I said, my voice shaking with anger. You had no right. Well, technically, my name was still on the paperwork, she said, like that made it okay. And besides, it's going to a good cause. Your brother needs that money. That was it for me. I couldn't believe my own mom had gone behind my back, forged my signature, and sold something that wasn't even hers to sell. And for what? To help Jake? I had nothing against him, but this wasn't about him. This was about her crossing a line that I didn't even think was possible. She sold something that wasn't hers, something my dad had given me, and then acted like it was no big deal. I knew I needed to do something about it, and the first step was confronting her in person. I drove to her house that same afternoon, my mind racing the whole time. I wasn't sure what I was going to say, but I knew I had to get it out. When I got there, I didn't waste time. I walked right up to the door, barely knocking before stepping inside. She was in the kitchen, humming to herself, acting like her world was perfectly fine. Meanwhile, mine was flipped upside down. She looked up and smiled like she didn't just pull the rug out from under me. Oh, hey, Sarah. What brings you by? I couldn't believe how casual she was acting. Like everything was normal. like she hadn't just sold my apartment behind my back. My heart was pounding, and I was so angry I could barely keep my voice steady. You really think what you did was okay? I snapped. Selling my apartment? Without even telling me? Her smile faded, but she didn't look as guilty as I thought she should. I told you, Sarah. Jake needed help for school, and you weren't using it anyway, she said, shrugging like it was no big deal. It was just sitting there, empty. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was acting like selling the apartment was some small thing, like it didn't matter. It wasn't yours to sell, Mom. That apartment was mine. You forged my signature. I was practically yelling at this point. She crossed her arms and leaned against the counter, still way too calm for someone who had just committed fraud. Technically, my name was still on the paperwork, and I'm your mother. I did what I thought was best for the family. That phrase, what was best for the family, it made me want to scream. She wasn't doing anything for the family. She was doing this for herself, using Jake as an excuse. I couldn't believe she was just brushing it off like it was nothing. You have no idea what you've done, I said, my voice trembling with anger. This wasn't about what was best for anyone. This was about you thinking you could take something that wasn't yours. She rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. You're overreacting. It's just money, Sarah. Your brother needed it for school. You've got your own life now, and you didn't even need that apartment. My hands were shaking at this point. I took a deep breath, trying to hold it together. You forged my name, Mom. Do you even understand how illegal that is? You think you can just take something from me and use it like your personal piggy bank? She sighed, clearly tired of the conversation. I'm your mother, Sarah. I didn't think you'd be so ungrateful about this. I was trying to help your brother. You'll be fine. You always are. Ungrateful. She had the nerve to call me ungrateful. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was beyond her usual selfishness. This was criminal, and she was acting like I was the problem. I've already contacted my lawyer, I said, and her face changed instantly. That calm, smug attitude? Gone. She straightened up, and for the first time I saw her actually get nervous. What do you mean, your lawyer? She asked, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the edge in her voice. I mean, I'm taking legal action against you, I said, my voice cold. You committed fraud. This isn't just some misunderstanding, Mom. You sold something that wasn't yours to sell, and you're going to pay for that. The color drained from her face, and for a second, she didn't say anything. I think she finally realized just how deep in she was. Sarah, you don't need to do this, she said, her voice a little more desperate now. We're family. We can work this out. I shook my head, feeling all the anger bubbling up again. No, we can't. You made sure of that the moment you forged my name. You didn't even think twice about it, did you? You didn't care what I wanted or needed. This was all about you, and I'm done letting you walk all over me. She was silent for a moment, like she was trying to figure out how to talk her way out of this. I didn't mean for it to get this far, she finally said. I was just trying to help Jake, and I thought, you thought you could do whatever you wanted, I interrupted. You didn't care about the consequences. You never do. But this time, you're not getting away with it. I turned and started walking out of the kitchen, but she called after me. Sarah, wait! Please don't do this. We're family. You don't want to take this to court. I stopped at the door and turned to face her one last time. I didn't want any of this, but you left me no choice. I walked out and didn't look back. I felt like my whole world was crashing down, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She had pushed me too far this time, and there was no going back. The next few days were a blur of phone calls with my lawyer, emails, and collecting documents. My lawyer told me I had a solid case. Everything she did, every forged document, every shady detail, was coming to light. It was exhausting, but I had to keep pushing forward. I wasn't just fighting for my apartment. I was fighting for myself, for everything she'd taken from me, emotionally and financially. I wasn't ready for the legal battle ahead, but I didn't have a choice. Final update. It took months of back and forth, legal filings, and endless stress. But in the end, justice came through. The court ruled in my favor. My mom had indeed forged my signature to sell my apartment, and everything she did was not only illegal, but completely shameless. When I got the news, I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. After all the chaos, it was finally over. The ruling was clear. Mom was found guilty of forgery and fraud. She had gone behind my back, sold something that wasn't hers to sell, and pretended like it was nothing. It was more than just about money. It was about trust, or whatever was left of it. But now, it didn't matter. She was going to prison, and I wasn't going to lose what my dad had given me. When I heard the judge's decision, it didn't hit me right away. It felt surreal, like this couldn't really be happening. Part of me didn't even want it to come to this. I mean, who wants to send their own mother to prison? But at the same time, I knew this was the consequence of her actions. She crossed a line I couldn't ignore, and it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about standing up for what was right. Mom tried to act tough during the trial, like she still had the upper hand, but by the end, you could see the fear in her eyes. She knew she'd lost, and the reality was sinking in. When they handed down her sentence, I didn't feel happy or triumphant. I felt empty. She was going to prison for fraud, and I didn't think there was any way our relationship could recover from this. Not that I wanted it to. She'd made her choice, and now she had to face the consequences. But the apartment wasn't the only thing hanging over her head. There was something else I needed to deal with: Tom. See, throughout all of this, Tom had no idea what had been going on. He didn't know about the forged documents, the fraud, or the apartment sale. But more importantly, he didn't know about the affair I caught my mom in all those years ago. I'd been holding on to that secret for way too long, and after everything that had happened, I knew I couldn't keep it in anymore. It was time for Tom to know the truth. I wasn't sure how to approach it. I mean, how do you tell someone that their wife cheated on them? That she'd been lying to them for years? I debated with myself for a while, but eventually I decided the best thing to do was just rip off the Band-Aid. He deserved to know the truth no matter how much it hurt. So I met up with Tom. We sat down, and after some awkward small talk, I just came out with it. Tom, I need to tell you something, and it's not going to be easy to hear. He looked at me, confused, but he could tell I was serious. What is it? He asked. I took a deep breath. A few years ago, when I was 17, I caught Mom cheating on you. I didn't know how to tell you at the time, so I kept it to myself. But after everything that's happened, I can't keep it in anymore. You need to know. His face went pale. I could see the shock hit him like a brick. She cheated on me? He stammered, like he couldn't even process the words. When? I explained everything. The day I came home early and saw her with some random guy, the way she laughed it off, how I'd kept quiet all these years because I didn't know how to deal with it. I told him how much it had weighed on me, but I also told him that after the fraud, after the court case, I realized I couldn't let her lies control my life anymore. Tom just sat there for a moment, staring at the table. I could see the anger building in his eyes, the way his hands clenched into fists. I had no idea, he finally whispered. I had no idea she was capable of all this. I didn't say anything. What could I say? It wasn't like I could make it any easier for him. First, she screws you over with the apartment, and now I find out she's been lying to me for years, he muttered, almost to himself. Then he looked up at me, and I could see the pain in his eyes. Thank you for telling me. I wish I'd known sooner, but thank you. After that conversation, things moved quickly. Tom filed for divorce. He couldn't stay with her, not after everything that had come to light. Between the forgery, the fraud, and now the affair, it was clear their marriage was over. And honestly, I think he was ready to be done with her. She'd manipulated him, just like she had with me, and he finally saw her for who she really was. In the end, she lost everything. Her marriage was over, her relationship with me was gone, and she was in prison. I wish I could say I felt some sort of satisfaction from it, but I didn't. It just felt sad. All of it. I got the money from the sale of the apartment back, and I used it to buy my own house. A place that was mine, with no strings attached. It felt like a fresh start, something I desperately needed after all the drama. I haven't spoken to my mom since she was sentenced, and honestly, I don't plan to. There's no fixing what she did. Some things are just too broken to repair. As for Tom, we're not super close, but we've kept in touch here and there. I think he's just trying to figure out how to rebuild his life, and I can't blame him. It's hard when you realize someone you trusted was lying to you all along. And Jake? He's doing okay. He's in college now, and we talk sometimes. He didn't know anything about what Mom had done, and I don't blame him for any of it. I think he's just as shocked as I am by all of it, and he's trying to figure out how to move forward too. We're working on building a relationship, but it's hard with everything that's happened. So, that's it. That's where things stand now. It's been a long road, but I'm finally at a place where I feel like I can breathe again. Mom's in prison, Tom's free of her, and I'm moving on with my life. It's not the ending I imagined, but it's the one I got. Story 5. This story is titled, My Girlfriend Laughed About Cheating on Me, saying I'd never suspect a thing. So I quietly left and let her life fall apart without me. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. This happened a few months ago, but I needed time to process everything before posting. Made a throwaway since some friends know my main, and this story is pretty specific. I should probably start with some background about myself. I'm 27 male and work as a medical device sales rep for one of the big players in the industry. You know those guys who show up in operating rooms with fancy equipment and teach surgeons how to use the latest implants and tools? That's me. Got into it right out of college, landed a junior position, and basically killed myself working up the ladder. Turns out being young in this field is actually an advantage because you can handle the insane schedule better than the older reps. For those wondering about the money, since it becomes relevant later, base salary is around $165,000 plus commission. Good years can push total comp well over $250,000, but you seriously earn every penny. My schedule is absolute chaos. Up at 4 a.m. for early surgeries, driving between 3 different hospitals most days, late-night dinner meetings with doctors to discuss upcoming procedures. Sometimes I'm in the OR for 12 hours straight. Other times I'm putting 300 miles on my car going between facilities. It's not exactly the kind of job that makes having a normal relationship easy. I also do some consulting work on the side, helping smaller medical companies figure out their sales strategies and get their foot in the door with hospitals. That brings in decent extra cash, but means my weekends aren't really my own either. Looking back, this crazy schedule probably made it easier for Sarah, obviously not her real name, to pull off what she did. But we'll get to that part. Met Sarah, 23 female, about 3 years ago at this little hospital cafe, where I was killing time between surgeries. She was working there part-time while trying to finish her communications degree. Man, first time I saw her, it was like one of those stupid movie moments. She was gorgeous, had this infectious laugh, and seemed genuinely interested in my work. We got talking about medical stuff, and she had all these questions about what I did. Looking back now, those questions were way more focused on money than actual interest in the job. But love makes you fucking blind, I guess. I remember our first real date. Took her to this nice steakhouse near the hospital. She ordered the most expensive thing on the menu without even glancing at the price. But I was so caught up in how amazing she looked that I didn't even care. She told me all about her dreams of working in healthcare PR. How she wanted to help medical companies tell their stories better. Funny how that worked out. Turned out she was pretty good at telling stories all right, just not the kind she claimed. Red flags started popping up pretty early, but I was too stupid to see them for what they were. Like 2 weeks into dating, she was already asking really specific questions about my commission structure, wanting to know exactly how the bonus system worked when the big payouts came. She'd make these jokes about how lucky she was to find a guy with such a stable career. But you know how it is when you're falling for someone. Your brain just finds ways to explain away all that stuff. The really messed up part? I actually liked how interested she seemed in my career. Most girls I dated before would get annoyed with the crazy hours and constant phone calls from surgeons. But Sarah? She acted like she totally got it. Would bring me coffee during long cases, text me good luck before big surgeries, even learned some medical terminology so she could understand what I was talking about. Now I know it was all an act. But damn if she wasn't good at playing the supportive girlfriend role. What gets me is how she managed to make everything seem so natural. Like, she didn't just go straight for the expensive stuff, she built it up slowly, Started with small things, like asking me to grab dinner because she was broke till payday. Then it was helping with her phone bill because she had an emergency. Before I knew it, I was paying for everything, but it happened so gradually that it felt normal. I remember this one time, maybe 6 months in, when she got stranded at the mall because her card got declined. Called me crying about how embarrassed she was. I left in the middle of a lunch meeting with a surgeon to bring her my card. She acted so grateful, kept saying how lucky she was to have me. Even made this big show of trying to pay me back later, with money she'd borrowed from her mom, I found out later. Looking back, that was probably a test, seeing how far I'd go to help her out of a crisis. The thing that really kills me is how many people tried to warn me. My best friend straight up told me she seemed more interested in my wallet than me. My sister said something felt off about how quickly Sarah went from independent to totally relying on me financially. Even my mom made some comments about how Sarah never offered to help with anything that cost money. But I defended her every time, like a complete idiot. Told them they didn't understand her situation, how hard she was working on school, how much potential she had. God, writing all this out makes me feel like such a moron. But I guess that's why I'm sharing it. Maybe someone else will recognize these patterns before they waste 3 years of their life like I did. So fast forward about 6 months into our relationship. Sarah's lease was coming up, and she started dropping hints about how much money she could save if we lived together. Made it sound so logical. We were spending most nights at each other's places anyway, and her apartment was basically just storing her stuff at this point. Plus, she argued, combining our incomes would let us get a really nice place downtown. Yeah, about that combining incomes part. We found this gorgeous apartment downtown, walking distance to some of my main hospital accounts. $2,800 a month, which was steep, but Sarah convinced me it was worth it because I'd save so much time not having to commute. The plan was she'd pay utilities and groceries while I covered rent. Seemed fair at the time since I made more. Spoiler alert, that arrangement lasted exactly 2 months. First, it was little things. Her hours at the cafe kept getting cut. They hadn't. I found out later she'd requested fewer shifts. Then she was struggling to keep up with her car payments because textbooks cost so much this semester. Each time she had a money problem, she'd get really anxious, start crying about how stressed she was trying to balance work and school. And stupid me, I'd swoop in to fix everything. I still remember the day she quit her cafe job. Came home in tears, saying her manager was sexually harassing her. Another lie. Turns out she just stopped showing up and got fired. She was so upset, saying she couldn't focus on her studies with all this stress. I told her not to worry about it, that I'd cover everything until she graduated. The smile she gave me, man, should have seen it for what it was. She'd just landed her biggest score yet. After that, my expenses basically doubled overnight. Rent, utilities, her car payment, insurance, phone bill, credit card bills, which somehow kept getting higher, plus all the little stuff she'd ask for. New clothes for interviews, a laptop for school, textbooks, supplies. She even convinced me to pay her student loan payments because she was building her credit for our future. Meanwhile, I'm busting my ass even harder at work. Started taking on more consulting gigs, picking up extra surgeries whenever I could. There were weeks I'd be at the hospital by 4:30 a.m., finish my last case at 6 p.m., then drive 2 hours to consult at some startup med device company until 10 p.m. Some nights I'd get home so tired I could barely see straight. But Sarah? She was living her best life on my dime. Always had the latest iPhone, designer bags, new clothes. Started getting her nails done weekly, hair done monthly at this fancy salon downtown. When I'd mention the expenses piling up, she'd get really quiet and sad, start talking about how maybe she was holding me back, and how she understood if I wanted to find someone more successful. Classic manipulation, but it worked every time. I'd end up apologizing and telling her not to worry about the money. Here's the really fucked up part. She got really good at timing her expensive requests with my big commission checks. Like she had a sixth sense for when I was about to get paid. The day before a major bonus hit, suddenly her laptop would break or she'd have some urgent bill that needed paying. She knew exactly how much I made and when I made it. The worst thing was watching my savings disappear. I used to be pretty good with money, had a solid emergency fund, was investing regularly, the whole responsible adult thing. But supporting two people in an expensive city while trying to maintain the lifestyle she'd gotten used to, that shit adds up fast. Found out later she was actually taking pictures of my credit card statements when they came in, tracking exactly how much I had available. Looking back, I can't believe how blind I was. The signs were everywhere, like how she'd get super interested in my work around commission time, asking detailed questions about which surgeons I was working with and how many cases I had scheduled, or how she always seemed to have some crisis, that needed money, right when I was too busy with work to really look into it. Now I'm ready to tell you about the day everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were usually my busiest days. Typically had back-to-back surgeries scheduled at 3 different hospitals. But that day, something weird happened. My last 2 cases got canceled because the surgeon caught the flu. It was only 2 p.m., and for the first time in months, I had a free afternoon. I decided to surprise Sarah. She'd been complaining that we never spent time together anymore. Rich, considering what I found out later. There's this really high-end sushi place she loves. The kind where you drop $150 easy on a few fancy rolls. I called ahead, ordered all her favorites. That ridiculous gold flake roll she always posted on Instagram. The fatty tuna that cost more than my first car payment. The works. Even got that overpriced sake she liked. The whole drive home, I was actually feeling good about life. Like maybe things were finally settling down at work and we could get back to how we used to be. Funny how life gives you these perfect setup moments before it kicks you in the teeth. Got to our building around 3 p.m. The first weird thing I noticed was that her study group car wasn't in the parking lot. Sarah always said her friend Amy drove her to these study sessions. But instead, I saw her best friend Jessica's car. Not a red flag on its own, they hung out sometimes. But something felt off. Walking up to our apartment, 17 floors, elevator was down for maintenance because of course it was. I started hearing voices through the door. The door was cracked open slightly. Sarah always did this when she had friends over because our hallway got so hot. I was about to walk in when I heard my name. Mike has no fucking clue, Sarah was saying. And then she laughed. Not her normal laugh. This was different. Mean. Mocking. He's so desperate to keep me happy he'll pay for anything. Did I tell you guys about the new iPhone? Didn't even question it when I said I needed it for school projects? I froze. The takeout bag suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my hand. Through the crack in the door, I could see them sitting in our living room. Sarah, Jessica, and another girl I didn't recognize. They were drinking wine. The expensive stuff I'd bought for our anniversary. Girl, you've got it made, Jessica was saying. But aren't you worried he'll find out about Chris? My stomach dropped. Chris. Her ex. The abusive one she'd told me horror stories about. The one she claimed she had to get a restraining order against. Another lie, I later discovered. Sarah actually snorted. Please. Mike's so busy working he doesn't even notice I'm gone half the time. He actually believes I'm at study group 3 nights a week. Meanwhile, Chris and I are using his credit card to fund our dates. The other girl, found out later it was Chris's sister, chimed in. But what if Mike checks the credit card statements? He never does, Sarah said, sounding proud of herself. He's too tired from all those surgeries. Plus, I always time the bigger purchases around when he gets his commission checks. He thinks I'm so interested in his work. Oh, honey, how many cases do you have this month? That big surgeon must be keeping you busy. Meanwhile, I'm just calculating how much I can spend. They all laughed at that. At me. In my own fucking apartment that I paid for. Chris says I should keep Mike around until I finish school, Sarah continued. He's like my personal ATM. And he's talking about proposing soon. Can you imagine? I could probably milk him for a huge wedding, then take half his stuff in the divorce. But don't you feel bad? The sister asked. He seems nice. Nice but boring, Sarah cut in. Do you know what he did last week? Apologized for being too tired for sex after a 12-hour surgery. Pathetic. At least Chris knows how to have fun. And it's not like Mike doesn't get anything out of it. He gets to tell everyone he has a hot girlfriend. That's worth the price of admission, right? More laughter, more wine, more jokes at my expense. They went on for a while, Sarah telling them about all the ways she manipulated me, all the lies she'd told, all the times she'd been with Chris while I was working extra hours to pay for her lifestyle. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the food. Part of me wanted to burst in there, to scream, to throw them all out. But a colder, calmer part of my brain kicked in. The part that closes million-dollar deals and keeps surgeons happy. Don't let them know you know, that part whispered. Not yet. Get evidence. Plan it out. Make them pay. So I did something that probably saved me a lot of headache later. I pulled out my phone and recorded about 10 minutes of their conversation. Got Sarah on video admitting to cheating, to lying, to using me for money. Then, as quietly as I could, I walked back down 17 floors. Sitting in my car, surrounded by overpriced sushi I'd bought for a woman who'd been laughing at me for years, I started making plans. They wanted to play games with my money? Fine. Let's see how funny they think it is when the ATM shuts down. After sitting in my car for what felt like hours, I drove to a bar near the hospital where I knew none of Sarah's friends would show up. Started making a list on my phone of everything I needed to do. The medical device sales world teaches you to be methodical. When you're dealing with million-dollar contracts and surgeons' egos, you learn to plan everything down to the smallest detail. I decided to treat this like I would a major account. Gather intel, document everything, then execute perfectly. First stop was my bank. Thank God for Helen, this older lady who'd been handling my account since I started my job. When I told her I needed to review every transaction from the past year because I suspected fraud, she didn't even blink. Spent 3 hours going through statements. And holy shit, the pattern was so obvious once I was actually looking. Every time I had a big commission check coming in, there'd be a spike in emergency expenses. New laptop, designer bags, spa days, all perfectly timed around my paydays. Helen helped me document everything, then set up new accounts at a different bank. Don't move your money yet, she advised. Just be ready. Smart lady. Next, I called my lawyer buddy Dave, met him at his office after hours and laid everything out. The recording from today, the bank statements, everything. He was actually impressed with how she'd played me. She was building a paper trail, he explained, making it look like you'd established a pattern of supporting her lifestyle. If you'd married her, she could have made a case for maintaining that lifestyle during divorce. Dave helped me make a plan. First, we documented everything in my apartment that I'd paid for, taking photos and collecting receipts. The designer bags, the jewelry, the electronics. Turned out I'd spent over $40,000 just on gifts in the past year. He also advised me to start documenting every time she was supposedly at study group, tracking her locations, saving any social media posts, everything. Remember that shared iPad she used for school? Turns out she never logged out of her messages or email. I'm not proud of what I found, but fuck it. She brought this on herself. There were hundreds of messages between her and Chris going back almost 2 years. Pictures of them together at hotels. Hotels I paid for. Restaurant receipts from my credit card. She'd even been sending him money through Venmo. My money, naturally. But the real goldmine was her conversations with her friends. Screenshots of my bank statements that she'd sent them. Laughing about how much she could spend. Messages planning how to ask for more money. Going to tell him I need a new laptop for finals. The old one works fine, but whatever lol. Detailed discussions about how to slowly push for marriage. Once I get the ring, it's game over. I'll own half his shit. The more I dug, the worse it got. Found messages to Chris about trying to get pregnant. Imagine how much child support I could get from him. He'd have to pay for everything. Thank fuck I always insisted on protection. There were even messages making fun of my work schedule. This idiot is doing back-to-back surgeries while I'm at the beach with my real man. I didn't sleep that whole week. Every night after she went to bed, I'd go through more messages, take more screenshots, gather more evidence. During the day, I acted completely normal. Went to work, did my cases, came home tired. She didn't suspect a thing. Even asked me to buy her a new MacBook because hers was acting weird. I did it. Wanted to keep her thinking everything was fine. The hardest part was playing nice with Chris's sister, who started showing up at our apartment more often. She'd sit there drinking my wine, eating food I paid for, knowing the whole time what was going on. Once I heard her warning Sarah to be more careful. Mike's not stupid, he might catch on. Sarah just laughed and said, "Please, he's too busy making money to notice anything." I also started digging into Chris's background. Remember how Sarah told me he was some successful business owner? Yeah, that was bullshit. He worked as a bartender at some dive bar and had a record, mostly petty theft and a DUI. But he did have one interesting connection. His probation officer was a guy I knew from the hospital. We weren't close, but we'd chat when I saw him around. Filed that information away for later. By the end of the week, I had everything I needed. Video recording of Sarah admitting to cheating and financial manipulation. Screenshots of hundreds of messages between her and Chris. Photos of them together at hotels and restaurants. Bank statements showing patterns of suspicious spending. Documentation of all the lies about her study groups. Evidence of her planning to trap me with marriage pregnancy. Screenshots of her sharing my financial info with friends. Background info on Chris that would come in handy later. I saved everything in multiple places. Cloud storage, USB drives, even printed out hard copies that I kept in my office. Dave reviewed it all and confirmed I had more than enough to protect myself legally. But be smart, he warned. Don't confront her yet. Let her keep thinking she's winning. So I waited. Kept playing the role of the oblivious boyfriend. Even took her out to a fancy dinner that weekend, where she spent the whole time texting Chris under the table. Watched her buy another $500 purse with my card while she had plans to meet him later that night. All the while, I was getting my pieces in place, preparing for the moment I'd shut down the ATM for good. The weekend after I gathered all the evidence, Sarah told me she had another study group session planned. Said she'd be gone all day Saturday working on some big project. I knew she was actually planning to meet Chris. I'd seen their messages planning a day trip to a nearby beach town, using my credit card to book a hotel room, of course. That Saturday morning, I woke up early and made her breakfast in bed. Played the perfect boyfriend one last time. She was so convinced of her control over me that she actually took a selfie with the breakfast I made, captioned it "being spoiled," and posted it to Instagram, while texting Chris about their plans for later. As soon as she left, I put my plan into action. First step was the financial nuclear option. Remember Helen from the bank? She'd helped me prepare everything. Within an hour, I had transferred all my money to the new accounts at a different bank, removed Sarah as an authorized user on all credit cards, canceled every card she had access to, changed all my banking passwords, put a fraud alert on my credit report, documented every penny she'd spent in the last month. Next came the apartment. I'd already talked to my landlord earlier in the week, explaining the situation. Guy was actually really understanding. Turned out his ex-wife had done something similar to him. He agreed to let me break the lease with minimal penalty, and had already drawn up papers removing Sarah from the building's security access. I hired movers, paid them extra to come on short notice. In 4 hours, they packed up everything I owned and everything I'd bought for Sarah. All those designer bags, the jewelry, the electronics, everything went into storage. Left her personal stuff, the things she'd actually bought herself, neatly packed in boxes in the living room. The movers were just finishing up when I got a text from Sarah. "Having lunch with the study group. Miss you." She attached a photo of a salad that I knew was actually from last week because I'd seen her post the same photo in her group chat with Jessica. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to the storage facility and documented everything I'd moved, taking photos and videos for legal purposes. Dave had advised me to keep all her stuff safe and accessible. This way she couldn't claim I'd stolen or damaged anything. The facility's security cameras would prove nothing had been touched. Around 4 p.m., my phone started blowing up. Sarah's first message was casual. "Hey babe, might be late tonight. Project's taking longer than expected." Translation: she and Chris were probably getting day drunk at the beach on my dime. I didn't reply. Instead, I went to meet Dave at his office. We'd prepared a stack of papers, documentation of all her spending, proof of the affair, evidence of her sharing my financial information, everything. Made copies and sent them to my work email, my personal email, and gave sets to both Dave and Helen for safekeeping. By 6 p.m., Sarah was getting nervous. More texts started coming in. "Babe, why aren't you answering? Did you try to use the credit card? There must be some mistake. Mike, what's going on? Why can't I get into my bank account? The cards aren't working. Call me ASAP." I watched the messages pile up while having dinner with Dave. He walked me through what to expect. She'd probably cycle through panic, anger, attempts to manipulate, and finally desperation. "The key," he said, "is to not engage at all. You have all the power as long as you stay silent." Around 8 p.m., Sarah finally went home. I know the exact moment she walked into the apartment because my phone essentially exploded. 8:14. "What the fuck, Mike?" 8:14. "Where is all your stuff?" 8:15. "Why are my things in boxes?" 8:15. "Call me right fucking now." 8:16. 15 missed calls. Then came the voice messages. I listened to them later. Quite a performance. She went from screaming to crying to begging in the span of minutes. By 9 p.m., she was calling from different numbers, probably borrowing phones from neighbors. I blocked each one. She tried email, blocked. Instagram, blocked. Even fucking LinkedIn, blocked. She sent Jessica to my office. Security had already been notified not to let her in. The final message I got before blocking her completely was particularly desperate. "Please, Mike, I can explain everything. I need my stuff. I have finals next week. I can't lose the apartment. Please just talk to me. I love you. Whatever you think happened, it's not what you think." The morning after I moved everything out, Sarah went into full panic mode. I woke up to 47 missed calls and over 100 text messages from various numbers. She'd apparently spent the night calling everyone we knew, trying to figure out what happened. The story she was telling people was fascinating. According to her, I'd lost my mind and stolen everything while she was studying with friends. See, Sarah and Chris had this regular routine. They'd meet at this upscale hotel where they thought nobody would recognize them. The manager gave me access to their security footage, showing them using my credit card to check in multiple times over the past few months. Even better, she had receipts showing them charging room service and spa treatments to the room. While Sarah was having her meltdown at the apartment, I was setting up the final pieces. I had Dave draft a formal letter detailing everything we'd discovered, including exact amounts she'd spent on unauthorized purchases, dates and times of her meetings with Chris, copies of messages planning to trap me with marriage, pregnancy, documentation of her sharing my financial information, evidence of her using my cards to fund their affair. The letter made it clear. She had 48 hours to arrange to pick up her belongings from storage, or they'd be considered abandoned. Also, any attempts to contact me would be considered harassment. Dave had it delivered to her at the apartment by a courier who recorded the delivery. Sarah's reaction was explosive, to say the least. She showed up at my office, mascara running, screaming about how I was ruining her life. Security had to escort her out. She tried waiting in the parking lot. I just stayed inside until she left. She even went to my mom's house. Bad move. My mom had never liked her and took way too much pleasure in shutting the door in her face. But here's where it gets really good. Remember that probation officer I mentioned? Turns out Chris wasn't just on probation. He was on his last warning. The photos I had of him drinking and driving were a direct violation. His probation officer was especially interested in the credit card fraud angle. Within 48 hours, Chris was arrested for a probation violation. Sarah found out about Chris's arrest while she was in the middle of trying to salvage her semester. She'd missed 2 finals because she was too busy having a meltdown about losing access to my money. Her professors weren't exactly sympathetic when she tried to explain that she couldn't take the tests because her boyfriend had caught her cheating and cut her off financially. The domino effect was beautiful to watch. No access to credit cards meant no way to pay for anything. No apartment, she wasn't on the lease, meant she had to move. Missed finals meant failing grades. Failed classes meant academic probation. No money for next semester's tuition. Chris in jail meant no backup plan. She tried everything to get back in contact with me. Some highlights. Had her mom call my mom, got shut down hard. Sent a handwritten letter to my office, returned unopened. Created new social media accounts to message me, blocked. Got mutual friends to try to mediate. Showed them the evidence, they backed off. Even tried to file a police report claiming I'd stolen her things. That backfired when I showed them the documentation. The best part? Those friends who used to drink my wine and laugh at me behind my back? They disappeared real quick when they realized Sarah couldn't fund those fancy brunches anymore. Jessica, who'd been her main enabler, blocked her number after Sarah tried to crash on her couch and borrow money for the 5th time. Meanwhile, Chris was having his own problems. During his probation violation hearing, evidence of the credit card fraud came up. His probation got revoked, and he was looking at serious jail time. His sister, remember her from the wine drinking session? Tried to contact me to explain things. I sent her the video of her laughing along while Sarah talked about manipulating me. She didn't message again. But my favorite moment came about 2 weeks after everything went down. Sarah's dad called me. I actually answered because I was curious what she'd told her family. Turns out she'd been lying to them too. Told them she had a job, was paying her own way through school, all that. Her dad had just found out about all the debt she'd racked up in his name. He wasn't calling to defend her. He was calling to apologize to me and ask how much she'd stolen. The entire house of cards she'd built came crashing down in less than a month. She had to drop out of school, move back in with her parents in their small town, and get a job at the local Walmart. Last I heard, she was trying to convince her parents to pay off her credit card debt and let her enroll in community college. They refused. Chris got sentenced to 6 months for the probation violation. His bartending job fired him, and with a fraud charge pending, good luck getting another service industry job. Apparently, he's been telling people I set him up. Yeah, I totally set you up to drink and drive while on probation, bro. The best revenge? I didn't have to actually do much. Just cut off the money and let their own actions catch up with them. Sometimes the best revenge is just stepping back and watching karma do its thing. Story 6. My wife told me, not in the mood, so stop acting like I owe you my body just because we're married. So I gave her exactly what she wanted, a husband who didn't want her. Now she's wondering why I never came back. Hey Reddit, I've been reading stories here for years but never thought I'd post one myself. Mine isn't about cheating or drama. It's about what happens when love slowly disappears and one person starts pretending that's normal. I'm not here for pity, just wanted to share how I learned the difference between peace and emptiness. I'll be honest, if you told me a year ago that my marriage would fall apart without a single fight, I'd have laughed. My wife Lauren and I had always been solid. 5 years together, 3 married. We had our rhythm. Same grocery day, weekend hikes, movie nights, and yeah, our intimacy was always there. Not like rabbits, but consistent and natural. It was part of how we connected. She used to initiate just as often as I did. There was laughter, teasing, real affection. But a few months ago, something shifted. I couldn't tell you the exact day, but it was like someone flipped a switch and turned the warmth off. It started small. She stopped holding my hand when we watched TV. She'd pull away when I kissed her. Then one night, I reached over in bed to touch her arm like I always did, and she sighed. Not tired, but irritated. "I'm exhausted," she muttered. I pulled back a little. "You okay?" I said I'm tired. "Yeah, I heard that." I meant, is something wrong? She rolled over, facing away from me. "Nothing's wrong. Stop being annoying. I can't do clingy right now." That word hit me like a cold slap. Clingy? Since when did wanting to be close to my own wife make me clingy? She'd never talked to me like that. I remember just lying there staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself she was just having a bad day. The next morning, she acted normal. Made coffee, checked her phone, hummed while scrolling through emails like nothing had happened. I wanted to bring it up but didn't. Part of me didn't want to start a fight over something that might have been nothing. Still, over the next few days, the distance got worse. She was polite but disconnected. Her love yous started sounding like auto responses. She'd sit on the couch with her laptop, earbuds in, completely zoned out. I'd talk, and she'd nod without hearing a word. That Friday night, I tried again. I came up behind her while she was making dinner, kissed her shoulder, and said softly, "Missed you today." She froze like I'd just done something wrong. "I'm literally cooking right now, can you not?" I stepped back. "It's just a hug, Lauren." She didn't even look at me. "You don't have to be all over me all the time." All the time. I stood there realizing I couldn't remember the last time I'd even touched her all week. I backed off and set the table in silence. After dinner, she went to bed early, claiming she had a headache. I stayed up on the couch, trying to piece things together in my head. Work stress? Hormones? Something I said? But no matter how many scenarios I ran, none of them explained the tone in her voice. That snapping, irritated tone like my presence itself was bothering her. By Saturday night, I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. I called my best friend Randy. He's been married almost 10 years, got 2 kids, so I figured he might give me a grounded take. He picked up on the second ring. "Yo, what's up?" I told him everything. The attitude shift, the weird coldness, how she suddenly seemed allergic to affection. He said after a pause. "I hate to say this, man, but is there a chance there's someone else?" I rubbed my forehead. "I thought of that, but there's no signs. No weird phone habits, no hiding, no late nights. She's just different. Sometimes that's exactly how it starts," he said. "They emotionally check out first. Then they justify the rest later." "Lauren's not like that," I said immediately, even though I wasn't sure I believed it. "I'm not saying she's cheating," he said. "I'm saying maybe something's going on in her head that she's not sharing. You need to pay attention, though." We talked for another 20 minutes. Randy didn't say anything I hadn't already thought of, but hearing it from someone else made it feel heavier. After we hung up, I just sat there staring at the dark TV screen, thinking about how crazy it was that I even had to consider those possibilities. I never saw Lauren as the cheating type. She was too proud, too image-focused for that. But then again, people surprise you when they start rewriting the rules in their head. I glanced at the bedroom door down the hall. The lights were off. Part of me wanted to wake her up and just ask straight out, "What's happening to us?" But the other part knew how she'd react. Defensiveness, attitude, maybe another jab about me being clingy. So I sat there in the dim light of the living room, realizing that for the first time since we met, I didn't know what was going on inside her head, and that scared me more than I wanted to admit. I didn't want to be that guy, paranoid, insecure, or one of those husbands who turns into a detective over nothing. But the way she looked at me lately, like I was interrupting her life, was driving me insane. So I decided to stop talking and start watching. Quietly. That Monday, I started paying closer attention. When she left for work, when she came back, what she did at night, who she texted. I wasn't looking to catch her. I just wanted to understand what changed. Every morning she left around 8. Same routine. Evenings were different. If I was home first, I'd greet her at the door. She'd smile, but it was the kind of smile you give your boss when you're pretending to care. We'd have dinner together, talk about work or some random thing she read online. But the second I tried to bridge the distance, even just touching her hand, her body would tense up like I'd just asked for a favor. After a week of tracking her behavior, a pattern formed that I couldn't ignore. When I kept my distance, she was fine. She'd laugh, tell stories from her office, hum while doing the dishes. She'd even tease me about little things, like how I load the dishwasher wrong. But the moment I tried to make it romantic, a kiss on the cheek, a compliment, anything beyond friendly, she'd retreat. Every time. That's what confused me. It wasn't like she was avoiding me completely. She'd text me during the day, share memes, talk about groceries. She just didn't want closeness. Like emotional intimacy was okay, but physical intimacy was somehow dirty or stressful. Still, there was nothing sneaky. No late night phone calls. No odd names in her notifications. No unexplained absences. If anything, she seemed too normal. That's when Randy's words came back to me. Sudden coldness doesn't just come from nowhere. So maybe it wasn't another man. Maybe it was me. Maybe I'd missed something, said something, did something. I started doubting everything. My tone, my texts, my presence. One Thursday evening, she got home earlier than usual. She seemed in a good mood, chatting about a coworker's engagement party. I decided to play along. I didn't flirt, didn't touch, didn't test. I just let her talk. And like flipping a switch, she relaxed. I noted that down in my head. When I don't want her, she wants to talk. When I do, she shuts down. I couldn't shake the thought that maybe she was replacing me emotionally. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. Someone at work, maybe. A coworker she could be herself around without all the pressure. But again, there were no signs. That weekend, something happened that tested my patience. Saturday morning, she went for a shower, leaving her laptop open on the couch. Normally, she was careful about logging out or closing tabs, but this time, she must have been in a rush. I stared at the screen. Her email inbox was open. I sat there for a solid minute, fighting myself. I wasn't the snooping type. I hated the idea of invading her privacy. But at the same time, I couldn't stand being in the dark anymore. If she's hiding something, I told myself, I need to know. So I did it. I checked her emails first. Work stuff, random subscriptions, a few messages with her sister about redecorating the guest room. Nothing strange. Then I looked at her social media. Just the usual posts about books, dogs, and self-care. I even opened her message history. No sketchy conversations, no flirty emojis, no deleted threads. Everything was normal. And that hit me harder than finding something would've. If there'd been another man, at least it would have made sense. At least there'd be a reason for her behavior. But there was nothing. Just a clean inbox, a normal chat list, a wife who'd emotionally vanished without explanation. I closed the laptop right before I heard the shower stop. My hands were shaking. Not from guilt, but from frustration. When she came out, wrapped in a towel, she smiled faintly and said, "Can you hand me my phone?" Her tone was casual, too casual. I handed it over and watched her scroll while walking to the bedroom. No secretive look, no guilt. Just her, acting like everything was fine. I sat there on the couch, staring at the screensaver spinning across her laptop. I felt like an idiot for checking. Later that night, while she scrolled through her phone in bed, I said quietly, "You've been distant lately." She didn't look up. "You're imagining things." "I'm not," I said. "You barely touch me anymore." "Not everything's about that, Jake." Her tone had that sharp edge again. "You make it weird when you turn every little thing into something dramatic." I wanted to argue, but I didn't. There was no point. After she fell asleep, I sat on the edge of the bed, thinking about how insane it felt to be married to someone and still feel like a stranger in your own home. There wasn't another man. There wasn't cheating. There wasn't some secret hidden in her phone or laptop. There was just nothing. And somehow, that felt worse than betrayal. At least cheating would have had a reason behind it. This just felt like she'd slowly decided I didn't matter anymore and forgot to tell me. So I did what any logical guy would do. I tested things. I stopped trying altogether. No hugs, no kisses, no flirty comments, just routine. I wanted to see if she'd notice. She didn't. In fact, she seemed lighter. She smiled more, laughed at random videos, even made small talk over dinner. The moment I stopped showing affection, she came alive again. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I wasn't some desperate romantic. I was steady, grounded, but I couldn't understand how my own wife could look happier when I treated her like a roommate. It went on like that for about 2 weeks. I kept my distance, and she seemed relieved. That Saturday morning, we were eating breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee, the usual. She was scrolling her phone, half listening to me talk about work. Out of nowhere, I said, "You ever think about when we might start trying for kids?" Her phone froze mid-scroll. She looked up slowly, like I'd just insulted her. "What? You remember we talked about it a while ago?" I said. "We said maybe after year 3, once we're settled." Her face tightened. "Yeah, about that." "What about it?" "I don't think I want that anymore," she said flatly. I blinked. "What do you mean you don't want that anymore?" "We've always talked about having at least 2. I changed my mind." "Changed your mind when?" She sighed, setting the phone down like she was tired of explaining. Jake, can we not do this right now? I just don't see myself doing the whole baby thing anymore. It's not me. It's not you? I repeated. Lauren, we planned our future around this. We bought a house with extra bedrooms because you said. She cut me off sharply. Well, I changed. People change. Sorry if that's inconvenient. Inconvenient? I said, keeping my tone calm even though I could feel my pulse in my throat. That's not like changing your favorite color, Lauren. This is huge. Don't make it dramatic, she snapped, grabbing her plate. I'm just being honest. Being honest would have been saying this years ago. I shot back. She stood up, jaw tight. You're making me feel cornered. Can we not? And just like that, she walked out of the kitchen, plate in hand, like the conversation was over. I sat there staring at the empty chair, the half-drunk coffee, the silence. I wasn't even angry, just stunned. All those nights we'd talked about names, schools, even what kind of parents we'd be, gone with one word. Never. Later that night, I tried to bring it up again. She was on the couch, watching one of her shows. I sat beside her quietly. Lauren, I started, we need to talk about earlier. She didn't look away from the screen. I said I don't want kids. What else is there to say? Maybe not about kids, I said, trying to stay calm, but about us. You've been pulling away for months. We barely touch, we barely talk. Now you're rewriting our future like it's a shopping list. Something's not right. She rolled her eyes. You're overthinking again. I'm not overthinking. I'm observing, I said. You've changed completely. You act like I'm an obligation instead of your husband. She gave a dry laugh. Oh, so now I'm a villain? Because I'm not acting the way you want? That's not what I said. Yes, it is. You're mad I'm not obsessed with you like before. I leaned forward. I'm not asking for obsession. I'm asking for effort. Effort? She scoffed. Jake, we have a house, jobs, bills. That's effort. Marriage isn't supposed to feel like some movie all the time. This isn't about movies, I said, voice firm. This is about us not even trying anymore. She sighed dramatically and turned the volume up. God, you're exhausting sometimes. That was it. The tone, the dismissiveness. I turned the TV off. Fine, I said. Then let's try something practical. How about couples therapy? She gave me this short laugh, like I'd told a bad joke. We don't need therapy just because I don't want sex all the time. My jaw tightened. That's not why I said therapy. She smirked. Sure it isn't. I stared at her. You really think everything's fine, don't you? Everything is fine, she said without hesitation. You're just making problems where there aren't any. For a second, I didn't know what to say. She was so sure of herself, so convinced that she'd done nothing wrong, that I started doubting my own reality. All right, I finally said. If you ever decide you want to talk like adults, I'll be here. She shrugged, turned the TV back on and said, I'm watching this. I walked out and went to my office, closing the door behind me. Sat in my chair for an hour, just staring at the wall. That laugh, that dismissive, smug laugh when I mentioned therapy, stuck with me. It wasn't that she disagreed, it was that she didn't care. She didn't want to fix anything. That night, while she slept soundly beside me, I lay awake realizing something brutal. This wasn't just about affection or attraction. It wasn't even about kids. It was about her completely shutting down every dream, every plan, every piece of us that used to exist. And I was finally starting to accept that she wasn't confused. She was content. Content in a version of marriage where I didn't matter. Another week passed that way. I worked late most nights because it was easier than sitting across from her pretending everything was fine. When I did come home early, she'd already eaten. Thursday night, I came home around 7. She was making dinner. Pasta, her favorite. I stood in the doorway for a second, watching her hum to herself, completely at peace. That peace used to make me happy. Now it just made me feel like a ghost. At dinner, she smiled faintly. You've been less intense lately. I like this version of us. Less intense? I asked. Yeah, she said between bites. It's just peaceful. No pressure, no expectations. Feels like we're finally comfortable. I stared at her for a moment. You're happy like this? Yeah, she said simply. Aren't you? No, I said. Not even close. Her fork froze midair. What do you mean? I mean I'm not happy, Lauren. I've been trying to pretend I am, but this... I gestured between us. This isn't a marriage anymore. She rolled her eyes. Oh my God, here we go again. Here we go again? We haven't talked about this in weeks, I said, keeping my tone calm. You said you wanted peace. I gave you peace. Now you're calling it happiness, while I'm sitting here feeling like a stranger in my own home. You're being dramatic, she snapped. Just because I don't want to jump into bed every night doesn't mean I don't love you. This isn't about sex, I said. Really? Because it sure sounds like it. Every time we talk, it comes back to that. It's about connection, I said. Intimacy isn't just physical. It's how we show love, not just say it. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're unbelievable. You think love is measured by how often we touch? That's so shallow, Jake. I kept my tone level. You're twisting it. I'm saying I need to feel wanted by the person I married. You act like that's selfish. Because it is selfish, she shot back. You only care about what you're not getting. You don't care about how I feel. How you feel, I repeated. I've spent months trying to figure that out. You've shut me out completely. And the second I bring it up, you make me the problem. She slammed her fork down. You are the problem. You're obsessed with everything that's missing instead of appreciating what we have. I work, I come home, I share my life with you. What else do you want? I want my wife, I said quietly. Not a roommate who happens to wear my ring. She gave a dry laugh. Maybe you should have married someone who wants to play house every night. I'm not that person. Yeah, I said. I'm starting to see that. Her face hardened. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've been holding on to the version of you that actually cared about us. The one who wanted a life together, not just a routine. She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. So what? Now you're threatening to leave? Because you're not getting enough attention? I shook my head. I'm not threatening anything. I'm being honest. Honest, she repeated mockingly. You think you're the only one struggling? You think it's easy for me? Constantly being pushed to do things I don't feel like doing? I'm not pushing you, I said firmly. I stopped pushing months ago. You wanted space, I gave it to you. You wanted quiet, I gave that too. And you know what? You're still unhappy. You just call it peace. She glared at me, breathing hard. You're unbelievable. You twist everything. You make me feel guilty for not being some perfect wife who worships you. I never asked for worship, I said, keeping my voice even. I asked for partnership. She stood up, her voice rising. You just want control. That's what this is. You can't handle that I'm not bending to your needs anymore. I looked at her steadily. You know what's crazy? I've never once tried to control you. You, on the other hand, have decided that every normal part of marriage, affection, closeness, communication, is optional when it stops suiting you. She pointed at me like she was scolding a child. You're twisting my words again. No, I said. I'm just finally calling them what they are. She stared at me for a few seconds, then said coldly, If you're that miserable, Jake, then leave. The room went silent. The only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator. Is that what you want? I asked quietly. She didn't hesitate. I want peace, and you clearly can't give it to me. I nodded slowly, studying her face. There was no anger, no sadness, just finality. Okay, I said. Then I won't stand in the way of your peace. Her expression flickered for half a second, maybe confusion or surprise, but I didn't stick around to decode it. I stood, took my plate to the sink, and rinsed it. She didn't say another word. That was the night I decided I was done. Not in rage or heartbreak, just clarity. If she wanted a life without pressure, without closeness, without me, I'd make sure she got it. I woke up the next morning feeling clear. Not calm, not angry, just done. The decision didn't feel emotional. It felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for months. While she got ready for work, I sat at the kitchen table sipping coffee. She said goodbye like any normal day, kissed the air near my cheek, and left. That tiny space between us said everything. The second the door shut, I pulled out my laptop and searched for divorce attorneys. It felt strange seeing the word on the screen, but I didn't hesitate. I found a reputable firm nearby and booked a consultation for the next morning. No hesitation. No second guessing. After the call, I looked around the house, our house, and realized how lifeless it felt. Every room looked staged, like a display in a furniture catalog. Nothing personal anymore. Her candles, her books, her perfect little arrangements. I could barely find traces of myself in it. I opened the closet and started packing my things. Slowly, carefully. Shirts, shoes, watch, chargers. I didn't grab everything, just what was mine. No dramatic suitcase slamming, no shouting, no tears. Just a man quietly detaching from a life he no longer recognized. Every now and then, I'd stop and glance at something that used to mean something. The framed picture from our honeymoon, the card she wrote me on our first anniversary, the blanket we picked out together at Target. It all looked like props from someone else's story. Before noon, my side of the closet was nearly empty. I left the hangers on the floor. The place looked hollow. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, thinking about what to say. I didn't owe her a long letter. I'd said everything worth saying already. She just never listened. So I grabbed a notepad and wrote, You wanted a roommate. I want a wife. That was it. Clean, final, and true. I left the note on the kitchen counter where she'd see it first thing when she walked in. The ring came off next. I stared at it in my palm for a moment. A simple band, nothing fancy. It used to symbolize something real. Now, it just felt like a reminder of how easily people can stop caring. I didn't want to throw it away, so I drove to a small pawn shop downtown. The guy behind the counter looked at it and offered me a fair amount. I left the shop feeling lighter. Then I drove to my brother's place on the other side of town. When he opened the door, he took one look at me and didn't ask a single question. Just moved aside and said, "Spare room's open." We sat on the back porch later that evening. I told him everything. The distance, the fights that never happened, the silence that did all the damage. He didn't say much, just nodded. At the end, he said, "Man, you held on longer than most would have." I shrugged. I kept thinking she'd come around. He gave a sad half smile. People like her don't come around. They get comfortable. He was right. That night, I lay in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the kind of quiet that doesn't ache, just exists. I expected guilt or sadness to hit me, but it didn't. Just clarity. Around 9, my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. I let it ring. A voicemail popped up, then another, then another. By the third one, curiosity got the better of me. I played the first. "Hey, where are you? Your stuff's gone. What's going on? Call me." The second one came a few minutes later, sharper. "This is ridiculous, Jake. Whatever you're trying to prove, just stop. You can't just leave without talking." The third was louder. "You don't get to do this. We're married. You're acting like a child." Then came the shift. Her voice cracked a little. "If I did something wrong, we can fix it. Just call me." By the fifth voicemail, she was panicking. "I know you're getting these. Please talk to me. Don't throw away everything over this." The sixth came in with anger again. "Fine. Be childish, but you'll have to come back eventually. You can't just walk away from responsibility." And then the last one. Quiet. Uncertain. "Did I say something wrong? I thought we were happy. I don't understand." I stared at the phone for a long time after that. Not out of hesitation, but realization. She really didn't understand. She thought this was about one fight, one misunderstanding, not the months of her choosing distance over love. I played the last message again. Her voice was shaking, softer than I'd heard in a long time. But even then, it wasn't regret. It was confusion that her peaceful setup had finally fallen apart. I typed one short text. "You wanted peace. You have it now." Then I blocked her number. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. No overthinking, no hope, no dread. Just silence. The kind that finally felt right. But silence doesn't stay silent for long. 2 days later, she showed up at my job. I was in the middle of a meeting when my coworker poked his head into the conference room. Jake, there's a woman asking for you at the front desk. Says it's urgent." I already knew. When I walked out, she was standing by reception, arms crossed, wearing that familiar mix of anger and disbelief. The receptionist looked uncomfortable. "Jake, we need to talk," she said. I kept my voice even. "You shouldn't be here, Lauren. You left me no choice," she snapped. "You disappear, block my number, and expect me to just... What? Pretend this isn't happening?" I gestured toward the hallway. "You can't do this here." "I'll wait in the parking lot then," she said firmly. "But you will talk to me." Security ended up escorting her out 15 minutes later after she refused to leave the lobby. My manager didn't even look surprised. Just said, "Rough week, huh?" and went back to work. They logged the whole thing and issued a no trespass notice, which meant if she showed up again, it'd count as harassment. It happened again 3 days later. Different outfit, same scene. Security walked her out again and logged it as a second violation, telling me they'd involve police if it happened again. That's when I contacted my lawyer to speed up the divorce process. She responded by contesting it. Her claim? I'd abandoned her over sex. When I read the paperwork, I actually laughed out loud. It was written like I'd stormed out because she skipped one date night. Her lawyer painted me as some emotionally stunted husband who couldn't handle maturity. My lawyer, a calm, older guy named Harris, read the documents and sighed. She's trying to frame this as a moral abandonment case. Common tactic when they don't have grounds for fault. She's got no idea what this was really about, I said. She doesn't need to, Harris replied. That's my job. He built a case around emotional neglect and loss of marital support. We had texts, emails, and my written notes between her and me from the months leading up to it. Nothing dramatic, just proof of her indifference. Harris said judges see that kind of pattern all the time. When the first hearing came, she showed up looking like she'd rehearsed the part of the wronged wife. Neat blazer, no tears, but plenty of sighs. Her lawyer stood and said, "My client was blindsided by her husband's abrupt abandonment. He made no effort to communicate or resolve issues through counseling. He simply decided physical dissatisfaction justified ending a marriage." And when it was Harris's turn, he stood calmly and said, "Your Honor, what my client ended wasn't a marriage. It was a one-sided arrangement where his emotional and physical needs were ignored for months. He did try to communicate. He was dismissed. He suggested counseling. He was mocked. This was not impulsive. This was survival." She glared at me the entire time, eyes sharp, jaw tight. The judge ordered a temporary separation period before finalizing anything. That dragged on for months. During that time, our mutual friends started taking sides. Some texted me quietly saying they understood, that they'd noticed how withdrawn she'd been at gatherings. Others sent long messages about how marriage takes work, and you don't just give up when things get hard. One even said, "She's devastated, man. She really loves you. But love without effort isn't love. It's comfort." Meanwhile, she started struggling with money. Mutual friends mentioned she'd complained about the mortgage being too much on her own. Still, she told everyone she was fine, that she just needed time to heal, and that I'd come back once I cooled off. Apparently, she even told her sister that I was having a midlife crisis. I was 33. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. No extra drama, no fighting over stuff, but life has a way of throwing one last scene in for closure. It happened on a random Tuesday afternoon. I stopped by a coffee shop near work to grab something before a meeting. The place was quiet, almost empty. I was scrolling through my phone while waiting for my drink when I heard a familiar voice. "Jake?" I looked up. Lauren stood near the entrance, holding a book and a to-go cup. She looked smaller somehow, thinner, more tired. The confidence she used to wear like armor was gone. She walked over slowly. "I didn't think I'd run into you." "Yeah," I said. "Small city." We stood there in awkward silence for a moment before she spoke again. "You look good." "Thanks." She hesitated, then said softly, "I've been thinking maybe we could talk. Not about getting back together or anything, just talk." I shrugged. "Talking didn't do much last time." She sighed. "I know. I get it now. Maybe I was too cold, too rigid. I could have been more understanding. Maybe we could try again. I can accommodate what you need." That word, accommodate, made something inside me close off completely. I shook my head. "I didn't want to be accommodated, Lauren. I wanted a wife who actually wanted me." She froze. Her lips parted like she had something to say, but nothing came out. I put my coffee down, looked her in the eye, and said quietly, "You wanted peace. You got it. I'm not part of it anymore." Then I walked out. When I got back to my car, I sat there for a minute. Not out of sadness, out of relief. For the first time, I didn't feel haunted by what happened. I didn't feel guilty or bitter. I just felt free. The kind of freedom that comes when you stop waiting for someone to understand what they never will. That's what I had now. A year later, life looked nothing like it used to. I'd moved into a smaller apartment closer to work, got back into running, and started cooking again. My mornings didn't feel heavy anymore. There wasn't tension waiting behind every door. And then there was Emma. I met her through a mutual friend at a small cookout. She was the type of person who made conversations easy. No games, no guarded tone, no pretending. She had this calm, warm energy that felt real, not forced or polished. We started talking more, and before I realized it, she'd become part of my daily life. With Emma, everything that used to feel like effort just happened naturally. She'd reach for my hand without thinking about it. She'd lean into me on the couch instead of away. She'd kiss me mid-sentence for no reason. It wasn't about being physical all the time. It was about being wanted. I hadn't realized how emotionally starved I'd been until she showed me what normal actually looked like. One night, months into dating, we were lying on the couch watching some dumb movie neither of us was paying attention to. She shifted closer, put her head on my chest, and said softly, "You zone out a lot when you talk about your ex." I laughed. "Old habit. I think I spent a whole marriage trying to figure her out." Emma looked up at me. "You ever get answers?" "Yeah," I said. "They just came too late." She didn't ask more. She just nodded and kissed my hand. That small gesture, that quiet understanding, hit harder than any apology I'd ever gotten from my ex. For the first time in years, I felt like I was part of something that went both ways. But life has a funny sense of humor. You think you've closed a chapter, and then it sends you a reminder just to make sure you meant it. Every few weeks, her name would pop up somewhere online. I didn't follow her, but mutual friends still had her added. Posts would float across my feed. Quotes about men being obsessed with sex, modern relationships being shallow, or how hard it is to find a man who values emotional connection over physical needs. Once she even posted, "Men only want you for your body, and when you stop giving it, they act like you're broken." It was like watching someone rewrite history in real time. I'd scroll past without reacting, but sometimes the comments made me shake my head. Her friends would write stuff like, "Preach," or "You deserve someone emotionally mature," and she'd reply with heart emojis, like she was the spokesperson for misunderstood wives. Meanwhile, mutual friends would send the occasional update. "She's still single," one of them said. Still ranting online. Still doesn't get it. Apparently, she tried dating again, but every relationship ended the same way. Too much pressure, too many expectations. She'd talk about how exhausting men were, how they always wanted something from her. She never once seemed to ask what she was bringing to the table. Then I heard she started therapy. At first, I thought maybe she'd finally turned a corner. Maybe she was ready to face her part in everything. But that hope didn't last long. A friend who still talked to her told me she fired her first therapist after 3 sessions. "He said she's afraid of vulnerability," my friend explained. "She said he was projecting and found someone else." The new therapist, apparently, validated her truth, meaning she found someone who told her exactly what she wanted to hear, that she was right all along and men just couldn't handle a woman with boundaries. It was sad to hear, but not surprising. She'd rather rebuild her own narrative than admit she might have killed her marriage by shutting it down piece by piece. Sometimes I'd think about what would have happened if she'd been willing to listen back then. If she'd said, "You're right, something's wrong, let's fix it. Let's..." But that version of her didn't exist anymore, and I wasn't waiting around for her to find it. I didn't hate her for what happened. Hate would mean she still had power over me. I just pitied her for never learning that love isn't supposed to feel like relief from someone else's presence. It's supposed to feel like comfort in it. I turned over, wrapped my arm around Emma, and closed my eyes. For the first time in years, I wasn't replaying conversations in my head or trying to understand someone who didn't want to be understood. I'd finally stopped chasing the version of peace that comes from silence. Because real peace comes from being wanted, not just tolerated. And Lauren? She wanted peace over passion, comfort over connection. So I gave her exactly what she asked for: a life without me. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.